after a gap.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think very happy to be like it.
she's a special person in our heart and for GIDR also. So,
Thank you.
So about Professor Deepak Kumar Misra, he has done so much of work on a wide range of very interesting issues on political economy of agrarian change, on issues in rural livelihoods, agrarian institutions, labor migration, and written several books and articles on that. And he's also the recipient of the first Sanjay Thakur Memorial Award given by the Indian Society of Labor Economics. And he has held visiting positions at the University of Oxford, at the Russian State University and York University in Toronto. This is a very brief introduction to a person who has done so much of work. And so please, Professor Misra, please conduct the event. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Professor Das. We have started with a really wide-ranging discussion on the relevance of the rural non-farm economy as such, and one of the persistent themes that comes through the literature, if we go through the development of the literature on the role of rural non-farm economy, particularly in the context of developing economies, is the huge diversity that that is observed in this sector. You have very small micro enterprises, self-employed people, to large enterprises, and the production conditions, employment relations, labor relations in these wide variety of sectors deserve our close attention. Today we have 4 papers, and these 4 papers, broadly, I think, based on the available secondary data, they try to look at the rural non-farm economy by unpacking this totality from different dimensions. The first paper is about vulnerabilities of non-farm employment. The second one is about the whole question of female workforce participation, which has been one of the intriguing questions in contemporary times. Then we have 2 studies, one on socially marginalized youth in Kerala, and another is on non-farm wage and employment in Telangana. So we have a mixture of all India as well as regional studies. So without spending much time, let me first invite Priya Harchandani and Dr. Samik Shom from Institute of Management, Nima University, Ahmedabad, to present their paper. Each speaker will have 15 minutes. I'll warn them at around 13 minutes or so, and then they can conclude in 2 minutes. And after that, we'll have, after having all the 4 presentations, I think we can have a round of discussion and questions. So let's start with the first paper, Vulnerabilities of Non-Farm Employment in Rural India, Evidences from NSSO and PLFS Data. Priya Harchandani and Dr. Som.
Thank you so much, sir. Good afternoon, everyone present here. I'll just take a few seconds to put up my presentation. I hope my presentation is visible.
Yeah, it is.
Good afternoon once again. My name is Priya Harchandani. I'm pursuing my PhD in the area of labor economics from Institute of Management, Nirma University. With me today, I have my supervisor, Dr. Samik Shom, who's a professor of economics at the Institute. Today, I am going to speak about some of the vulnerabilities, or say the situation in the non-farm employment sector in rural India. The study is entirely based on secondary data, which is available from NSSO and PLFS. So starting quickly with the context, we know that generation of non-farm rural employment is considered to be one of the bigger drivers of changing income levels in the rural economy. It helps by giving better and more broader opportunities of earning livelihood for small and marginal farmers, and somehow is also considered a pioneer in reducing poverty in any rural economy. For India, where landlessness is widespread, RNFE, that is rural non-farm employment, it offers various alternatives for earning livelihoods for the poor and the marginal workers. Initially in India, the idea of
may I request, please mute your mics other than the speaker. Others are requested to mute.
So may I continue?
Yeah, please continue.
Thank you. So initially, the idea of promoting rural non-farm employment in India was to help the agricultural sector and take away the disguised and underemployed workers, give them a source of life.
Hello.
You have muted, I think.
No. I think that was. Miss Priya, you please unmute yourself. I think.
So there's an issue from the host's
Okay.
side. It's prompting muted.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. I'll continue further. Now, what I was speaking was that initially we were trying to promote rural non-farm employment to help the agriculture sector and help the underemployed and disguised laborers in the agricultural sector move towards a better employment scenario and boost their productivity and improve their standard of living. However, with the growth of agricultural employment reaching some sort of saturation and the growing rural urban divide in the globalizing India, what we have come to realize is that RNFS or rural non-farm sector has grown not only with respect to the perspective of reducing poverty and boosting economic growth and rural development, but it also supports and helps in enhancing sustainability of usage of the natural resources that we have in rural India. Now, given this context, our study is based on two sets. First is the first part talks about the trends and the composition of the rural non-farm sector in India. We are trying to look into how much the sector has evolved, has grown in the last 2 decades. The period of study for this part is from 2004 and 5 to 2020-21. We have taken the secondary data which is available, unit level data from for the 61st and 68th round of NSSO and all the rounds of PLFS, periodic link for service, and we are trying to look into not only how much the sector has expanded, but are there any structural changes that we are looking into the sector? Which sectors are contributing if we say that the rural non-farm employment has expanded, and is this expansion leading towards better achievement of work or say towards attainment of decent work for all? For this, we're looking into the changing employment scenario in the rural India. First of all, what I have presented here is the labor force participation in rural India. This takes care of both farm and the non-farm sector in rural India. And we've seen that labor force participation for both males and females have changed since 2004 to 2020-21. Theories in labor economics, they talk about movement of female workers out of the labor market and in the labor market being dependent on the growth of the economy. If we see from 2004 to 2011, there is a deceleration in growth of female labor force participation, or what we see is from 2004 to 2018 per se, there's some sort of movement of female workers out of the labor market. What research says, and several celebrated authors have said, that females tend to move out of the labor market when the economy grows, as in they move back to domestic work, because the male household, the male headed households, or say the male members of the family, are able to provide for the family and somehow the additional work or additional income which the females bring to the households are not required when the economy is at a proper growth stage and inflation levels are in control. That is when females return back to their domestic duties. However, when the economy is in crisis, or when, say, the income levels are falling for the household, females once again step out of the household in search of income and livelihood to bring back the standard of living and maintain it. This is what we see, some sort of a U curve here from 2004 to 2020-21, specifically in the pandemic years, that is 2019-20 and 2021. We see that increased female participation is seen in rural India, which means during the time of crisis, women had to move out of their domestic duties and enter the labor market once again. Next, we move to the situation in the non-farm sector in rural markets. What again is seen is that there is an increase in participation of male workers in the rural non-farm sector. There's also an increase somewhat for female workers. However, for the pandemic years 2019-20 and again 2021, a deceleration is witnessed from 2018 and 19. This further I'll take up in the next. This is a point to be noted and will further take up in the next slide. Now, looking at the expansion in the sector, which was visible, we are looking into the structure, first of all, by sector of employment. What is seen is, as marked specifically 2 points. First is manufacturing sector, and the second is construction sector. For manufacturing, we've seen is some sort of decline, or workers are moving away from manufacturing sector, or one might point it this way, that manufacturing sector is not being able to absorb much of the rural workforce, given the expansion that we just saw is taking place in the rural non-farm sector. On the other hand, construction from 2004 to 2020-21, this sector has been absorbing a lot of workers. One reason for construction to absorb these many proportion of workers is that construction it employs a large number of unskilled workers and offers very low pay. However, some sort of wages and wages are given to these workers. But again, a point to be reiterated is that the quality of employment which construction offers is quite low. Given the amount of participation of workers being increased in construction, we can note that these workers are working in work which is of poor quality and are not or do not have access to any sort of protection in terms of income, social protection, or job security, or any other proper working conditions. Next on, we have distribution of workers in rural India by their status of employment. Here again, I have presented both farm and non-farm sector. What is important to note is, in the non-farm sector, from 2004 to 2021, we see an increase in casual workers, in male casual workers as well as female casual workers. However, the increase in female casual workers has been more rapid. Similarly, again, there has been an increase in regular workers in the rural non-farm sector for male and females. However, again, this increase in regular workers, although may point towards a good towards workers moving in towards good quality of work, but it is important to dissect this regular workers and check whether the work in this sector is actually good quality or not. Now, casual work in general is considered to be one which is of a poorer quality and which makes workers more vulnerable to the work and their situations. What is also to be noted is that as the economy is growing, as the economy grows, the workers move away from self-employed. The workers move away from self-employment in farm sector and go ahead to the non-farm sector. Next on, I mentioned that regular workers, the share of regular workers are increasing. However, when we look into the formal sector, we see that in these regular workers, the proportion of those working as informal workers have increased rather than those working in the formal sector. And this is applicable for both male and female workers. So what is witnessed is that even though increase is happening in the share of regular workers, but the work that they are doing is more of an informal work, and this also points towards increasing informalization in the rural non-farm sector. Next on, we saw that casual workers, the percentage of casual workers are also increasing. And as I said, the proportion of female workers in casual work has increased. However, this points towards declining quality of employment for these workers, both male and female, but more rapid for male. Now, this is the part of descriptive analysis, which I just presented. And what we see is non-farm employment has grown significantly in periods that have witnessed a sharper decline in the farm employment. And workers more in general have moved away from self-employment towards casual and regular work. And these type of work, specifically in casual and regular work also, people are mostly into informal work, which is characterized with low pay, devoid of any sort of protection. So a sector which was previously driven by self-employed, and the increase in demand for casual work does point towards a shortage or absence of opportunities for workers in the sector, both in terms of quantity of work and the quality of work it is providing. Therefore, therefore the wages also in the sector which we see are not equally divided, and mere increases in the composition of the sector may not be a valuable standpoint to analyze the growth of the sector or say that the sector has expanded. What is important to look is the quality of employment. Has it been increased, and whether the workers are moving away from vulnerabilities that they are presently facing. This prompts us to deconstruct and contextualize what is actually driving participation in RNFS, and also examine what factors are leading workers to move towards casual work, because a lot of increase that we have witnessed in the past 2 decades has been towards casual work. This brings us to the second part of the study, wherein we are trying to look for factors which influence participation of a worker in rural non-farm sector. And again, within rural non-farm sector, why are workers moving towards casual work? We know that several government schemes are available which are there to support the rural workers in terms of education, in terms of skill development. Even then, there has been an increase only towards casual workers, and it is important that to check why. For this, we developed 2 models. We have run binary logistic regression on these 2 models to assess the participation factors that lead to participation in both of these. The dependent and independent variables are present here on the screen. So moving forward, this is the first model where we are checking the participation of workers in the rural non-farm sector, and all the independent variables, they proved out to be significant. But what is important to see that even with an increase in rural non-farm sector, females are less likely to find good job in the rural non-farm sector, and whatever good quality of work is available, it is mostly available in favor of males. Again, we also segregated the study on the basis of age groups, household size, social group, general education, and technical education. I'll take over the results in a couple of minutes. This is the results for the second model that we generated. Here we are looking for participation in casual work. We've looked for females, age groups, household size, general, technical, and vocational education also has been taken into account. Moving ahead from the first model, we also wanted to look into, apart from the social groups, what is the impact of social religious groups. For this, we created 2 categories. We've divided our workers into, we've taken up Hindu and Muslim workers, and within Hindus also we've segregated on the basis of caste. Now, these results, although both of the models come out to be significant, what we see is that the odds of females getting work in the rural non-farm sector is very low, good quality work. And if they're getting work, they are getting work only in they're getting work only in the casual sense. Again, large section of workers in the RNFE, they are illiterate, because the odds of those who are working who are educated, working in the rural non-farm sector, or say particularly the casual work, is very, very low. So work specifically in the casual work is available mostly to illiterates, to people who do not have any sort of technical skills, or who belong to the lower castes, that is social groups, that is scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. Secondly, we've seen that individuals below and above the working age group also do not have access to good jobs or access to jobs in the rural non-farm sector. Workers belonging to the age of 15 to 59 who have gotten, which is the youth category, who have attained higher levels of education, they expect to move away from casual work. However, due to lack of appropriate opportunities in the sector, they will have to either take up casual work which is available in rural non-farm sector, or they'll have to move back to the farm sector. Further along, workers who do not have any sort of vocational education are less likely to be found working in the rural non-farm sector. Only those workers who have some sort of informal vocational education are found to be working in the rural non-farm sector, but that also in the casual work. Muslims and Hindus belonging to scheduled castes and scheduled tribes are likely to land some form of casual work and do not have better opportunities to move to the regular work in the rural non-farm sector. Also, as the size
Please
of
conclude. Yeah.
yes, yes, sir.
In a
Just
minute
2
or two.
minutes.
Yeah, please.
I'm just about to end. Yeah. And work as a family size increases, the odds of a worker participating in rural non-farm sector somehow declines. This brings us to my conclusion, wherein although we say and we have witnessed that the rural non-farm sector is growing, but the quality of work which is being growing is very, very poor, and we are far from achieving the goal of decent work for all. That is to say, not enough employment has been generated because, as the analysis also showed, for the pandemic years, workers had to move back to the agriculture sector, which proves that agriculture is still the crisis eradicating sector. There is pent-up demand for employment in the rural non-farm sector, which is evident from the increase in the number of casual work. And mere diversification of opportunities here will not be enough to uplift the plight of these workers. It is important we work towards the quality of employment. Until now, the growth has been driven by urban industries, specifically the construction and the manufacturing sector. That is, there is somewhere a need for us to develop the rural markets and rural industries so that workers are provided some form of work away from casual work. At the end, what we like to conclude is that the study here has proved that there is a major role that general, technical, and vocational education has to play. So for workers working in industries such as manufacturing and construction, it is important that these industries work towards educating these workers, provide them with skills which are required, not only for the work, but for a holistic development of the worker, so that which will actually help the worker move away from the current casualness of the work. There's also a gap in employment generation in rural areas, and there are opportunities which could be tapped in the rural market, but still a lot of work has to be done for that. Here, the key would remain to increase investment in the rural non-farm sector and generate better quality works. And industries and corporate sector, along with the government, will have a pivotal role in training and inculcating these skills and developing the overall holistic picture in the rural market. This is where I end my presentation. Thank you so much for patiently listening.
Thank you very much for this informative and very detailed analysis of the rural non-farm sector. Let me straight away invite the next set of authors, Neha Chauhan from Ministry of Finance and Nausen Nizami from Pandit Dindayal Energy University, Gandhinagar. The paper is titled An Empirical Study on Determinants and Trends in Female Workforce Participation Rate in Rural Urban Economy. So please, over to Neha and Nausen.
Good afternoon, sir. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you are. Please.
Thank you. Thank you. So I will just take a few seconds to share the screen, and I request my colleague Neha for the same. So, sir, we would be presenting it together. I'll be covering few slides, and she would be covering half of the slides.
Is it visible now?
Yes, it's loading, and yes. If you could please put in slideshow.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. So good afternoon, one and all. I take pleasure and to be a part of this conference, and I also thank the organizers and our session chair for the opportunity you're giving to us in presenting one of our collaborative papers. In fact, I thank Priya also that she has actually set the tone for the paper. Her analysis and research focusing on labor force participation and basically the situation of employment, quality of employment in rural non-farm economy. Our paper is also actually something in enhancement to what she has presented. We are more going to talk about the quantity because we are focusing our paper on female labor force participation rate, why the trends are dwindling, why the trends are reducing over a period of time, and we think that it's something as an issue of concern. So our paper focuses on the determinants and trends in female LFPR in the rural economy in India. So the flow of our presentation is we'll quickly share the background and rationale why we came up with this theme, followed by looking at some of the trends at global and national level and literature review, followed by main findings coming from our secondary data analysis. And then we'll talk about quickly on the policy implications and conclude. So setting a background over the years, I guess all of us are aware about reducing female labor force participation rate in India as well as abroad as a matter of concern. And that is in a way verified empirically when we look at the gender gap index, which is ranking India as 135th among 146 countries, even in this year, 2022. India is even behind in terms of the gender gap index, its neighboring countries. And even if we look in general about the kind of specializations which women are having in comparison to men, we generally find overrepresentation of women in education, health, and welfare subjects compared to STEM fields. Although I would say that in STEM it is slowly picking up. Our research has primarily focused on 4 areas. The main area is definitely the gender discrimination and the gaps in the labor market, followed by low workforce participation rate, which is definitely one of the angles that we are looking into, impact of educational attainment, and what are the other geographical dimensions in terms of rural and urban. Before I actually continue with the slide, I would want to make a quick note that although we started this research keeping in mind that we would like to focus more on workforce participation rate, but somehow because of some constraints that we were facing while doing the research, we had to, in a way, center our research more on labor force participation rate rather than workforce participation rate. So that's a small request to the organizers also. I'm really sorry that I couldn't communicate this to you in the last 1 or 2 days, that we have changed the title from workforce to determinants and trends in female labor force participation rate. So I'll be sending you an email about the same with the revised paper. Content is exactly same, only the title would be now changing given the focus on labor force. So now looking at the trends and global level to set the tone, we see that where India lies in this chart. So this chart, which has been taken from ILO via the World Bank, we see that in China, we still have this neighboring country, we still have 61.61% of females who are participating in labor force in the economically productive age group. But then followed by some developed countries like UK and US, we also see Bangladesh and Sri Lanka above what is the percentage of India, which is at the bottom, as can be seen as 19.23%. So female labor force participation rate is quite low in India globally also. And coming to the next data, this data shows that what is the labor force participation rate versus the GDP per capita, and this covers a period of 1990 to 2019. So we see that female labor force participation rate vis-a-vis GDP per capita also has been declining, which again is an issue. You see kind of inverted U-shaped curve, you can say, or in general it is declining. Particularly in the last 10 years, it has declined at a more increasing rate. Coming to the national trends, now we are looking at the gender divide. So if we see the data from 1994 to 2020, the male labor force participation rate is quite high. It's very, I mean, you can see the difference even in the graph as well as in the table, that how males in the economically productive age group are still participating and they are making use of economic opportunities. But because of various reasons, demographic, social, cultural, female labor force participation rate has nearly remained stable in the years 1994 to 2005. And after 2005, we don't see the figures in 30s. We see the figures falling into 20s with year 2018, 20.8, year 2020, 26.2%. So that's the latest data. Again, the same data is showcased in the form of a graph also. Coming to the next point, which is about the wages. Even if you look from the earnings point of view, that what are the deviations of female and male in terms of education level as well as average wages they are earning. So we see that the illiterate women who are showing in the first bar, illiterate women as well as men, even if we compare them as equally, not skilled, still the average wages of females is 89.3 per day compared to 174, which is like more than double in terms of males. And if I go to, even if we see that how this average wage per day is rising along with the education level, still we see that at almost all the levels of education, the female workers are basically earning quite less compared to the male workers, as evident by the data representation, and that shows even in the last column. Coming to the evidences from literature, actually we have been short of space to put all the literature, so selected literature we have put in the slides, where the focus is on what may be the reasons, the determinants in general, which have come from literature. And in fact, I'm really have the pleasure to see some of the authors as part of this conference also, whom we have cited. So selected literature says that it could be either family structure, which may be affecting the decision of a woman to enter or exit from employment, both in rural and urban areas. Then it's also a matter of what is the trend in real wages, because that also acts like an incentive for pulling the women as well as men in the labor force. Quarterly data, which has been taken from 2016 to 2019 by Deshpande sir and Professor Singh, that also showcases that the actual proportion of women who are engaged in work, which may not be actually measured, but they may be still engaged in meaningful and economically productive work, is way high than what is documented or what is reported. So possibly it's not that the female labor force is actually not working, it's just that they are not documented as female labor force, and that shows that the rates are low. And similarly, it could be because of cultural factors also, that sometimes females get employment, but then it's not a permanent and stable employment. So they may be working for 6 months or 8 months, 12, not entirely 12 months. So the break in employment comes, because of which again in times of reporting, possibly we are missing out the female labor force. The other paper by Professor Mehrotra and Ms. Sinha, that also talks about that the decline in female employment could be related to the decline in female agricultural employment. And there also the employment is reducing because of possible migration or change in various social factors. I would now request my friend and my colleague, Ms. Neha Chauhan, if she could please carry forward with the presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. In the course of our analysis, just a second, yes. In the course of analysis, we have used mainly two data sources. One is NSSO, various rounds of NSSO, and PLFS data for the year 2017 to 20. And we have analyzed this data to see what could be the factors behind such low rates of workforce participation, because still now with this discussion, I think we have established that rates are low, alarmingly low in our country. So first diagram is basically we have plotted all the data points against each gender, and then we have bifurcated it into rural and urban scenario. So you can easily see it's a very simple plain picture which says that all the female employment is clustered around 25% LFPR, and for male LFPR the points are clustered around 75%. If we further bifurcate into rural and urban, then we get 4 clusters. So like, this tells you that in rural areas, in rural as well as in urban area, female or women workers are contributing at around 25% of LFPR, and men are contributing around 75% of LFPR. So, this picture gives us some kind of uniformity. It says that more or less the situation is same in rural or urban area. But the situation changes when we go deeper into the data. If we take this data if we plot it as national, rural, and urban level, we will see that LFPR, irrespective of gender, I mean both genders taken together, is lower in urban area, and national figure, LFPR national graph is between rural and urban. So it is basically rural employment which is pulling this graph up. And that pull was much higher before 2018. It was after 2018 that these two graphs kind of merged together. So urban LFPR was low, urban LFPR was low, rural LFPR was higher than the national average. And this orange line, 57.8%, all these figures are in percentage. So the middle line shows the national LFPR. Now, if we so if we like go deeper into the analysis, and we see why this kind of diversion is there. So education becomes our goalpost. We'll see it becomes one of our indicator basically. So we'll try to see LFPR education wise. So for the purpose of analysis, education has been divided into various levels as indicated in the table below. So we have divided into five. We have divided it into five categories. Level not stated has been ignored. So less than basic is either no education or early childhood education, and then starting from bachelor's degree, it's advanced education. Primary and secondary comes in basic and intermediate. So the graph is education level wise female LFPR at national level. Here the bifurcation of rural urban has not been made. For every year there are 4 bars showing various levels of education. So just by looking at this graph, we can clearly see that there are 2 bars which stand out in every year: less than basic and advanced. So women have higher possibility of being employed or being a part of labor force if they are either uneducated, it means they have less than basic education, or they have advanced education. So in a way, it supports the argument which we see in literature that women are entering education institution and they are staying there for a longer period of time. So if a woman enters basic education, there's a high probability that she'll go through intermediate education also, she'll go for advanced education also, and then only she will enter workforce. Second is education wise, level wise male LFPR at national level. So male LFPR is, of course, it's at a higher scale, though the trends are more or less similar. One difference is striking here, that in the case of women education, basic and intermediate, both levels had a lower probability of entering into workforce, whereas in the case of male LFPR, only intermediate education is one of the bar which shows a lower percentage. So it says that if a man is entering into intermediate education, the chances are higher that he'll take up advanced education also before entering the workforce.
Please conclude in 2 minutes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So education-wise, now the next part of our analysis, that is till now I have shown you only the national level analysis. So if you look at the rural area, see the same trend follows. But one striking difference here is that less than basic in the bar for less than basic is higher for every year compared to bar of advanced education. It means if a woman is living in rural areas, the probability of being a part of labor force is higher if she's uneducated. If we look at education-wise female LFPR in urban areas, then the bar of advanced education is higher. It means if a woman is living in urban areas, then probability of being employed is high if she attains advanced level education. This could be because concentration of organized sector in urban centers and urban areas. I'll skip this. Male LFPR more or less is showing a similar trend. So where are women employed? So in order to look at that analysis, we have taken the percentage of women LFPR in the last 3 years, and it says that majority of women are employed in of course in agriculture, but that figure was declining till 2019. It fell from 64% to 60% in 19, but rose again in 64% in COVID year and after, which says something about signs of distress employment there. Other than that, I mean, these are very typical occupation, with which you associate women with, like education, manufacture of wearing apparel, retail trade, except motor and motor vehicle. And below these industry classifications, percentage of women employed was so low that it was minuscule. So we have kept it to major 4 occupations. Some of the policy recommendations are that reasons for such alarmingly low level of women workforce participation in our country, it's not just economical, there are certain sociological factors also behind it. In order to
Neha,
measure-
I think so. We have slightly less time. If you could move to conclusion.
yeah, I'll try to cut it short. So some of the policy recommendations that we would like to give is if certain support can be provided to women at workplace, like longer paid maternity leave, flexible hours, facility of daycare center at workplace, etc. Then now most of the businesses are in the gambit of GST. So if some kind of tax concession can be provided to employers who are employing women in their businesses could also be a game changer here. Then policymakers should aim at designing institutes or some programs where not just specialized education, but some hand-holding support and financial assistance could also be provided to women to increase their probability of being employed. So now, to sum up, I would just say that this lower workforce participation rate should be treated as an issue which needs to be addressed urgently, and it requires sensitization and awareness. For that, we need to educate people that having an extra earning member could also, the working women could also raise educated, socially responsible children with additional income. They could also provide better resources and opportunities to their children. And if we as a society continue to ignore this signal, it is possible that women workforce participation may continue to follow this downward trend with just some occasional spurts of distress employment. Thank you.
Thank you. This was a very informative paper on the question of female labor force participation. I'll look forward to the discussions that will follow later. If you have questions, I'll ask the members of the audience to please be prepared to ask them when we are through with the two other presentations. So may I now request Mohammad Anfash from the Central University of Punjab, Bathinda, to present.
Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Please. Yeah, you are.
Okay, just give a minute. I'm sharing the screen.
Yeah.
I guess my screen is visible. So, a very fine good afternoon to everyone on the line. I'm Vijay Mohammed Anfas, and I'm going to explain this paper, a study on labor force participation of socially marginalized youth in Kerala, employment and unemployment concern. I guess I am audible, right?
Yeah, you are. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So the socially marginalized youth means those who come under scheduled caste, scheduled tribes, and other backward communities. The study is taken though because it is significant to examine whether the backward class, that means socially backward class youth, are facing disadvantages while attaining employability in rural non-farm sector in Kerala, and what are the determinants of it. Here in Kerala, the major problems of educated youth is that mostly they are participating in unorganized sector, or rather being unemployed while waiting for a stable job. Thus, it is also important to study and find out whether these issues affect the overall labor market participation and its access among youth in rural non-farm sector. So moving on. So I had divided this presentation into 4 main point sections, that is objective, data and methodology, and major findings and conclusion. So in the study, we have used the annual periodic labor force survey and unemployment and employment rounds conducted by National Sample Survey Organization. And the data employed in our study include the survey during the 50th, 55th, 61st, 68th, and 77th rounds. That means the study from 1993-94 to 2019-20. And in order to find the determining factors, we have used simple profit regression model. Okay. So as we move ahead, these are the objectives of the study. Firstly, to examine the trends and patterns of rural youth labor force participation rate from socially and economically marginalized youth in Kerala. And secondly, to understand the factors determining youth labor force participation and unemployment in Kerala, especially from the particular rural non-farming sector. Okay, moving on to the analysis and findings. So a demographic dividend that Kerala is undergoing is characterized by a rising share of working age population in the total population. That means total employment in India increased to 25.5 million between 1993 and 94 and 99-2000. So over these 5 years, there was additional 22 million rise in agriculture. Clearly, a retrograde development there, and there was no structural shift taking place with workers moving out of agriculture until 2004-5. So underlying the low productivity in agriculture as whole, according to Parida, post 2004-5, for the first time, India's post-independent history, as many 23.7 millions of India's agriculture workers are abandoned in agriculture. So in Kerala at this time, there was a rising enrollment in secondary and higher education. And this also have been cited by many others like Rangarajan, Thomas, Kannan, and Ravindran and others. And due to a decline in employment in agriculture and manufacturing, and slow growth of construction, the process of structural transformation, which had gained momentum post 2004-5. We can see that 2004-5 India have been very prosperous here, and that has been stalled after that. So after 2012, that is 11-12 data, the decline growth of LFP reversed a catastrophic effect and had a positive effect across all social, because eventually we faced the COVID pandemic issues, and but eventually the LFP began to increase. So while witnessing the trend here, we can see that the ST and SC category youths have high level of LFR, which will be particularly due to their financial constraints, because they will be forced to join in the labor force at the earlier times. Whereas in case of OBC, the LFR has been decreasing wisely. And the other category youth here means those who includes other than these end groups. That means socially and economically marginalized groups. It can be like general and all. So these category youth also have labor force participation very low. And that can be due to basically their financial stability, that they will get more time to spend on education. Moving on. So this shows the share of labor force participation rate of youth in farm and non-farm sector in Kerala. So just by a glance, while passing from the year 1999 to 2019-20, here we can see that there is an increased level of LFR trend of marginalized youth, particularly in rural non-farm sector, except ST category, the scheduled tribes. That means ST category, those who are under ST, they are still clinged on to the agriculture sector. So, and we can see what are the reasons for it in the coming slide. So this is a slide showing the labor force participation of rural youth by the sexual category. In Kerala, the social structure is characterized by a complex religious system that often restricts female from participating in labor market. That is happening in rural Kerala. And by witnessing their sexual trend here, other than ST youth, all other marginalized youth are highly facing sexual disadvantages in Kerala. It has been seen that latently only 28% of SC, 30% of OBC youth, and 38% of other category females are participating in LFR, whereas the male percentage in rural areas are 72%, 70%, and 62% respectively. So this proves that in rural area, there still persists sexual disadvantages in participating in the labor force, even if it is an economy which has highest human development index. It can be due to the sexual division of families where women are expected to stay at home for domestic work, or basically a large number of women work, but their contribution to the labor market remain undetectable, as many of them are not paid workers. Then coming on to their rural educational part, we already know that the socially and let's see, we can short them as SEM. The SEM group youths were merely bothered about gaining education in the earlier times. During 1999-2000, we can see that after that 2004, there is an increasing trend. And but along the path of sectoral transformation, they became very aware of the importance of the education. And from this latest data, that is 2019-20, we can witness that after those hardship years, now SEM youth are more engaged in gaining educational attainment. But meanwhile, ST groups are still in the category of being educated up to only middle level. So this is only the trends of rural youth. Also in SEM groups, we can see OBC category youth, those who are highly participating in educational level, in case of higher secondary and graduation, are mostly participating in LFR. And also being in a socially and economically disadvantaged category selflessness has been witnessed undoubtedly, because here in case of the other, those 58% of them who participate in LFR are from others that who are graduated and above. Moving on. So this is the labor force participation of rural marginalized youth by their standard of living. So in the year 1999-2000, we can see that there was 61% of ST who were in richest category in the rural sector. And while moving on to the 2019-20, here the social category which were a lot higher, about 66% of youth here fall under the poor standard of income. That is, means they have very poor income. This in turn creates a high level of attention that is required for the case of ST youth. And in case of SC and OBC youth, they do have similar trend in most of in the standard of living, and most of them fall under middle and lower income groups. We can also see that the other category youth, about 37% of them are the richest income groups, which in turn explains the reason for their low level of LFER, because having the financial stability, they do spend more time on their families and other opportunities. So this shows the share of youth workers according to their type of employment and the sectors they are working in. Firstly, we know that Kerala is an economy which jumped from its agriculture to service sector. It's most of the income are generated through this one and only service sector. And in case of some youth in rural area, particularly ST and SC, they are too afraid to enter into an entrepreneurship or to be a businessman in non-farm sector. Ultimately, the business runs smoothly by having a good capital and good finance, but these are a matter of high uncertainty for them. Also, in case of ST youth, being highly educated in case of technical and vocational, they do have like highly participating as regular workers in the manufacturing sector. And also further, OBC youth, they do have a similar occupational structure in all sectors of employment. That means agriculture, manufacturing, and non-manufacturing and services. But they are more engaged in self-employment opportunities, and ultimately they are the only socially marginalized groups that are less working as casual workers. And finally, the other category youth, they act as a businessman in agri and manufacturing sectors, and are engaged in regular salary jobs and non-manufacturing sectors. So we have seen the shares and the patterns of the rural non-farming sector youth. So let's see what are the determinants for it and what are the reasons for it. So in order to find the reason for reason for it, we have used simple probability regression analysis of a labor force participation rate as well as the unemployment rate. So here we have found that in case of age, after a significant threshold level, youth LFER decreases with the increase in age. The same goes in case of their standard of living, that is MPCE, which means that after achieving a higher standard of living, youth in turn spend more time with their families rather than participating in LFER. And thirdly, the social groups. By social groups, ST and SC have a significant level of increased LFER because they are forced in the early ages to enter in the labor force participation. And finally, we also found that in rural areas, youth are more having advantages in participating in the LFER. And the most shocking result was that in case of Muslim females, whom the most of them come under OBC youths, are having high level of sexual disadvantages in participating in LFER. That means Muslim females, due to their religious and cultural constraints, the families are not very supportive in participating in the labor force. Here, the women are mostly considered as one to manage all the household chores and family matters than any other things. And those who have education levels of higher secondary and above, vocational and technical training, have more advantages in participating in LFER. And while analyzing the unemployment case for youth, here being in informal, that is having a daily wage job, is the most probably the best thing to not to remain unemployed in Kerala. We found also that although females are having higher disadvantages in participating in LFER, they also have higher unemployment levels. And we also found proof in Kerala with increase in educational levels here, unemployment also increased. That means educated youth are more prone to unemployment. It could be due to the participation of youth much more in education rather than work in the early times, or could be due to the lack of skills, lack of employment opportunities, migration of educated youth, or lack of further training opportunities. And finally, it also proves that the self-employed in the non-farm sector and the regular salary jobs are only ones to take over in order to cover this high unemployment rates in Kerala. So these are the summary of the findings that have been mentioned. I guess I won't have to repeat it again. Just go through it. Okay, let's move on. In Kerala, being a highly illiterate state, here youth are more engaged in the educational attainment rather than participating in the labor force in the early stages. Meanwhile, it doesn't have the enough resources to sustain these skill youth. The educational norms are still dependent upon the basic curriculums that have been constructed from the early ages. In addition, the education propagandas are not skill oriented, or rather according to the demands of labor market. So the basic impact of this concern are highlighted due to the increase in unemployment level, even though their LFER is very high. So youth who are having a higher level of education is being unemployed for waiting to get a stable job either, or a job according to their educational qualification. So by facing the reality, they either migrate to other region or are engaged in the casual work or like low menial jobs. Here we can witness that the underutilization by a positive trend of unemployment and according to the LFER. So the study recommends the urgent need for the policy implementation and the generation of employment opportunities in the context to demand and supply of the labor market in Kerala. So the labor market is an important segment of an economy and has a high impact on reducing the Kerala's poverty and their sectoral disadvantages and increasing the standard of living. So the major concern of Kerala is that it can't transform its demography due to their geographical constraint, because Kerala can't develop its industrial structure. But furtherly, it can enable some long-term industrial policies and repudiate its unemployment rate. So to sustain and utilize these skilled cohorts, the state government must look upon some major concerning issues, which is a long-term industrial policy that should be constructed by concentrated on healthy and eco-friendly industries, and adequate skill learning institution following by the labor market demands. And because here the trend is that students are getting educated, like in case of general education, after degree they are engaged in any casual works that they are getting. The opportunities are very rare, and the government should utilize the demand and supply of the labor market. And first, majorly, it should support youth entrepreneurs, because it is the only development model that I can go see through, even if the Kerala's economy has to develop. And also, it has to revise its old educational curriculums and issue a policy or guidelines to suppress the religious influence in the labor force participation rate. Thank you.
Thank you. Let us now move on to the last paper of this session by Siva Kumar from Council for Social Development, Hyderabad. And the paper looks at non-farm employment and wages in Telangana. It's Mr. Siva Kumar with us.
Sir, I'm here,
Yeah,
sir.
okay.
Yeah.
Please, yeah.
This technical
Please.
system is not operating perfectly. It is not opening.
Okay.
Good evening, everyone. Sir, shall I share my screen?
Have you shared your screen? We can't see the screen so far. Can't see your presentation. Yeah, I think it has started. Yes. Please go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Sir, actually, I could not prepare the slides for PPT. I would like to present my paper through this Word format. Today's my presentation is on trends in rural non-farm employment and wages in Telangana during 2004 and 5 and 2020 and 21. The objectives of this paper is mainly to look at the changes in rural employment pattern and trends in rural wages and farm and non-farm. When it comes to the method and data, throughout this inquiry, the state of Telangana was compared on national averages, and NSSY employment and unemployment surveys 2004 and 5 and 2020, 12 and 12, as well as the most recent periodical labor force surveys were used for this survey, sir. I wanted to project this paper on 3 sections. One is based on the work participation rate. And the second section comes to the employments in the agriculture and non-agriculture in the sense of farm and non-farm. And the third section deals with the wages, sir. These are the 3 sections I would like to present in my paper. When I come to the work participation in rural Telangana, actually my presentation is going to be in the 3 levels, 4 levels, by gender, social group, age, and educational levels, sir. When I come to the work participation by gender, rural work participation is considerably in Telangana 51%, 51.48%, and higher than the national average by 2020-21, sir. This pattern is followed by male and female in this period. Over the period from 2004 and 5, 4 and 5 to 2020-21, the rural worker participation rates decreased by 3.6% in Telangana. However, the decrease is higher than the national average. At higher national average is 2.87% over the period. When it comes to the rural female labor force participation, it has been increasing, sir, since 2018 and 19, which is higher than the national average. However, the increase is not as much as the magnitude of 2004 and 2004 and 5. When it comes to the work participation by social groups, rural work participation is higher among the SCs, followed by the STs in Telangana. That is higher than the national average. That figure also is higher than the national average. So the work participation rate decreased in Telangana over the period from the 2004 and 5 to 2020-21. The decrease is higher among the others and OBCs. When it comes to the work participation by age group, the work participation is higher among the age group of 30 and 60 in Telangana and India. However, the magnitude of participation is higher in Telangana when compared to the India. So the work participation has been increasing since 2018 and 19 among the age group of 30 to 60 years. It is decreased over the period from 2004 to 5 and to 2020-21. When come to the educational levels, it is interesting to observe that rural work participation is higher among the graduates in India, whereas it is considerable among the illiterates and graduates in Telangana. However, the rural work participation among the graduates decreased considerably in India and Telangana. When we look at the employment in the section B section, rural agricultural employment is dominated by the female, whereas rural non-farm employment is dominated by the male. when you look at the female participation in agriculture, it is declined over the period by 80%, and male participation in rural non-farm increased by 12% in India. The female worker participation employment decreased in agriculture by nearly 5%. Male in non-agriculture increased by nearly 3%. Employment by social group. When you look at the employment in social group, SCs followed by the STs participated considerably in agricultural employment, which is higher, whereas others participated is higher in non-farm employment. When you look at the age group wise, majority of the young people, age group between 15 to 29, participated in non-agricultural employment in rural Telangana as well as in India. Older people are still agriculture employments. The participation among the younger in non-agriculture is higher in Telangana when compared to the India, and it is increased tremendously by 17% over the period. When you look at the education level, the illiterate people are in agriculture, and graduate people are in non-agriculture in Telangana. Over the period, the non-agriculture in rural India increased. However, it is decreased in Telangana. When you look at the wages, overall, average wages per day in Telangana is higher compared to the India. Male wages as well are higher than the female in India and Telangana. However, so the female participation is high in agriculture, their wages are very low. However, rural female wages in Telangana is better when compared to the India. When you look at the wages of social groups, SC/ST wages in agriculture and non-agriculture is lower than the other groups in Telangana. And however, the wages in Telangana is better than India when you look at, if you look at the social group wise. When you look at the age group wise, the age group of 30 and 59 received high wages in non-agriculture, whereas 60 above age group received high in agriculture. The wages in Telangana, when you look at the age group wise also, the wages in Telangana is better when compared to the all India averages. Irrespective of the, when you come to the educational level, irrespective of the educational level, almost all the received same wages in rural Telangana, whereas higher educated people received wages received higher wages in Telangana. This is the trends in according to my observations, sir. When I come to the conclusion, according to the study findings, agricultural labor is largely received for the illiterate as well as the scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. It also reveals that while agricultural labor increased as percentage of total economic activity by 2012, it had fallen back to the levels observed at the beginning of the survey period by 2021. The rural non-farm sector has risen marginally, primarily between the two most recent PLFS 2 and 4. Non-farm employment is still strongly linked with the education and social group positions, both of which are uncommon among the disadvantaged people. The data, on the other hand, shows that the increase of the non-agriculture sector is linked to the rising the agriculture wages. Despite the fact that wages of the wages of farm laborers were lower than the non-farm workers, the agriculture wages grow at faster rate than the wages in non-farm workers. So these are my findings. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Now
my
the
presentation is over.
yeah, thank you very much. Your presentation brought out many nuanced details of the conditions of employment in the farm and the non-farm sector in Telangana. Now the floor is open for comments and discussion. If you want to ask a question or if you want to comment, please raise your hand.
Professor Misra, can I just ask a small question?
Please go ahead.
So this question is to Anfas. I'm sort of wondering, like, at some point, if I followed the presentation fully, so you're saying that despite higher education attainment and despite access to better skills in Kerala, so that is not necessarily linked to getting a good job or a kind of a remunerative job. Any comments on that, Anfas? Like, can you say that that the education itself is wasteful, the skill was not relevant? Is that what we are saying, or any other issues of aspiration which also matters?
Yes,
I'm sorry, this Shivakumar
Yeah.
Danyas's presentation, if that you can stop sharing that.
Okay.
I see that on my screen.
Yes, sir.
Please. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I got your issue. Like, myself is an example of that, big example. In the cases that I have latestly post-graduated from Central University of
Anfas, just
Punjab.
a minute.
Okay.
May I request Shivakumar, please stop sharing the screen, please? So that, yeah. Sorry, Anfas. Now, I mean, I don't know why it's.
Now it is stopped.
Yeah, Shivakumar may be facing some problem there.
Okay.
Yeah, please continue, Anfas.
So in Kerala, after being a postgraduate, I end up as an employee in a call center in Chandigarh. So being an economist and have been postgraduated from that, I even in Kerala, without if you have higher educational or educational skills and all, the opportunities are very rare. So that is the reason, because the increasing trend of migration from Kerala to Western countries, that you can see that there after the education they are getting the jobs. Here in Kerala, there is no point of education is important, that is for sure, but going for the higher education is a mere of uncertainty. So meanwhile, we have to look out our families and all. So after education, if you want a job in your career that you have studied, you have to shift to any other places or to migrate into. So otherwise, you have to go for any government employment opportunities like Public Service Commission, the exams and all, public exams and all. So by that we are getting jobs, or we have to enter into casual jobs or like contract jobs or any other jobs. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, sir. So is there anything else that I can help you with?
No.
Thank you. We'll see. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Oh, okay, sir. Thank you.
Any other questions, please? I can't see all.
Hi.
Yeah, please go ahead. Professor Sai, yeah, please.
I just wanted to, I mean, it's not a question, but it's also an information for me to get into the new set of analysis that is being now happening at a macro, I mean, at a micro level. I just broadly wanted to know from any of the paper presenters, did any of the result, I mean, surprise you? I was actually not very sure that if I were to do this analysis now without using econometrics, I don't think I would have expected anything different than what I got in terms of the results. If that is so, it's a larger question to all academicians like us that we have been ready to be able to raise a specific question, a new question in mind to do any analytical work. So, I mean, it's not a question, but just and I may be wrong. I mean, please respond.
Thank you, Professor. Let me take a few other questions and then I will ask the presenters to respond to that. I think Dr. Itisri Patnaik has a question. Can you please go ahead, Dr. Patnaik?
Hello, I am Itisri from GIDR. For the first presentation, I wanted to know whether you have actually taken care of comparing NSSO data and PLFS, because there's a lot of debate, as we all know, that the methodology are different and whether they are comparable or not. So whether as you are doing the unit level analysis, whether you have taken enough care to make both the data comparable. And also for the second presentation, I just wanted to understand, because you are talking about the Nossin's work, talking about the declining trend of female labor participation. We also need to. This is not a question actually. This is like I'm also trying to. I'm struggling to understand this, and also this is. I wanted to discuss with Professor Deepak Mishra ji that we really now need to think about coding and recoding the way that we code the data on female labor participation. Like what work should be considered as work, and what work as the way NSSO that we code, that we tick mark, this is the work done by women. For example, if I give example that the person who goes to sell a small thing in the rural area, but the mother or the wife is actually doing the major work at home by preparing all the preparatory activity. So whether that we need to include all the helping or all the preparatory activity, that should be also included. I mean, because we say that there is declining. There are a lot of literature that we talk, but it's now time need to understand how to code, how to consider that this is a work or not. So this is the time that we need to think and rethink and recode the way that we do mark as female labor. So if, for example, like as I gave you an example, like that I found out in my field itself, that the son goes to sell puchka, but while the mother prepare all the activity, preparing the masala and everything at home, and he just, when the son say he considered as a self-employed, but the mother doesn't. So how to then calculate all this thing? How to include this in the activities?
Thank you, Dr. Patnaik. May I now ask Dr. Tara Nair, Professor Nair, to speak?
Yeah, in some sense, I think Itisri asked my question. I think one is definitely the question of comparability, especially the PLFS is giving very interesting results as to the increased participation of women in non-farm sector during the COVID year. That's quite an interesting, at the same time, a questionable conclusion. I think we need to also then ask, some of those kind of larger questions about what is the politics of, or what is the production of that data, and what are the problems with that. I think just reporting, a secondary data may not perhaps give us a kind of a glimpse into the into reality.
That is question number one. Question number two is again in partly reflecting on what Idhishri said. I think especially the participation of women in non-farm, in urban non-farm activities largely, becomes very invisible in the sense that because, they take part or they join the labor force, very discontinuous and erratic participation in employment and labor force participation. So very often, the estimates that we see as 12% and third, I think, let me tell you that one of the recent estimates say that Gujarat's urban women female labor participation is just about 13% or so. But if you really go and really find out, we realize that maybe all the women are doing some work all the time. So the terms, the way in which, in some way, Idhishri was also talking about how to define those. And so I think we definitely need, if our interest is in understanding the dynamics of women's work, we perhaps need a very renewed set of instruments, questions, and understanding, conceptual understanding. I think through these kinds of analysis, I really like both the papers of Priya and Neha. Extremely insightful, what do you call it, slicing down of the data that you realized. But somehow the conclusions became quite predictable, or you were just reading those numbers. I think we need to go one step beyond, ask more fundamental questions, so that it becomes actually a policy critique, or a critique to the way in which statistics is produced, or the gendered way in which the statistics is produced in India. So that's perhaps is very important. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Otherwise, I'll ask the paper presenters to respond. Okay, let's go with Priya. Please respond to the 3 questions which you have. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone, for your wonderful insights. I would just like to point out there is a larger debate going on whether the two datas, NSSO and PLFS, are comparable or not. And as much as people support the data being non-comparable, there is similar sort of arguments on the other end where people consider, where researchers consider that the data is more or less considered because the sample somewhat has not changed. However, keeping in mind the ongoing debate, and because we do not have a conclusion, for the descriptive analysis, we did compare the numbers of labor force participation and others for both NSSO and PLFS. But for my empirical analysis, I worked with 2018 and 19 data, because research till now, that Fisher says that 2018-19 data produced by PLFS is more or less considered to be a stable one, given the economic scenario in that time. So I have not gone ahead and looked into comparing the data for econometric analysis on my own. And definitely wonderful insights. It's important to go one step ahead and beyond the numbers. And thank you so much, Tara ma'am, for pointing that out. I will surely include that in my research, and it will help me in the future. Thank you so much. If there are any other questions, I'm here to answer. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Neha or Dr. Nizami, would you like to respond? Yeah.
Yes, thank you for these insights. Of course, we'll add these observations in our paper also. And you were quite right when you said that, when we look at the data, it doesn't really give us the reality, because throughout our paper, we kept on saying that it's like, it's an interplay of social and cultural factors also, which play a major role in Indian society. But we have to keep in mind, see, there are time use surveys. We go and we take, researchers take interview, and they see how the time is being utilized by women in a household. But it's a reality that women are not coming out and being a part of organized sector. Even when women are, see, it's a number that women are coming out and being a part of educational institution. And researchers are arguing that women are not participating, women are not employed because they are spending more time in colleges and schools, etc. etc. But this is also a fact that women they have not been integrated in that manner in the organized sector. We have a very small organized sector in our economy. Even in the organized sector, they become the back force, they stay behind the curtain, and that's how they are supporting the work. And no one is currently, when we have reached 19%, when we have reached 22%, 19% in 2019, even then we are not taking it up as an issue which needs to be addressed. We keep on putting women on that high pedestal. We keep on calling them homemakers, saying that your contribution in the household is invaluable. What you're doing is, there is a need to mold that mindset that in a mission mode, we need to tell people like it happened in Swachh Bharat, that this practice needs to stop somewhere. And now the time has come when that shift is required in the society. The same kind of shift is required more or less here also. Yes, time use survey, we cannot deny their importance because they tell us that something is hidden which should be brought in forefront. But these numbers hold certain meaning when it's actually going down to such alarming levels and calls for policy intervention.
Okay, thank you. Shivakumar, would you like to respond to the queries? I think we are running out of time as well. We have another session to start. Okay, I'll not go into the details of the papers. Overall, you do bring out various aspects of the rural non-farm economy, particularly looking at segments within the rural non-farm economy. But I think the question about Professor Shah's question about are we getting the same results? Are we getting anything new or persistence? For example, the persistence of patriarchal norms and caste disadvantage which were brought out is a story in itself. Regarding the last intervention about sensitizing, I think I'll just say this much, that for too long we think we have been, as economists, we have been talking about other factors of production, but the production of human beings, the production of labor, human labor, the production of human labor for capitalism, and who actually benefits if certain amount of that work is kept hidden. It's when the mother or the informal worker or the home-based worker is her labor is not being counted, or the linkages between reproductive labor and productive labor in a capitalist system that ultimately leads to cheapening of labor for capital. Unless with that, we are bold enough to make that connection, I think we'll continue to be in this predicament. I'm not saying that patriarchy was invented by capitalism, but certainly capitalism benefits out of certain kinds of undervaluation of women's work. I'll stop here. Dr. Das, if you have any announcements to make.
No announcement as such. I'm very happy that Professor Deepak Misra, in fact, he has been overburdened today. He was a significant participant in the special panel in the morning session, and then he really sort of steered this very interesting session. And many thanks to all the paper presenters, Priya, Samik, Neha, Nosin, Anfas, and Shivakumar. And as I think many of the questions were hinting at, maybe there is a real need to not just relook at the existing data, but also sort of redesign or sort of to have a very different set of data, and which also Neha was mentioning that like maybe looking towards time use survey as something which has already been started by Professor Indira Hirve in the forefront. So I think we really need to bring out those nuances, and I think that's where most papers should be of great help. And also the interstate differences. In fact, the Telangana paper also brought out very interesting sort of findings. So with that, and very nicely conducted, Professor Misra, and all authors and the participants. Thank you very much. So we conclude.
Yeah, we conclude this session. Thank you.
Yeah. And now we sort of move on to the next technical session 2. That is sort of very broadly titled as Sectoral and Occupational Dynamics, to be chaired by Professor Indira Hirve, one of our very, very respected and very senior scholar, was in fact, I think the almost entire lifetime she has been contributing to our knowledge, and she has been doing a lot of work. So let me just very briefly introduce her. I mean, she's a very well-known, distinguished scholar, so I don't have to really introduced very in a long manner. She is currently the director of the Center for Development Alternatives in Ahmedabad. She is also an associate of the Levy Economics Institute of Bard College in New York. She has been a national fellow with the ICSSR. She was the president of the Indian Society of Labor Economics Conference, and she holds a doctorate from the Delhi School of Economics. And she also studied at the University of Mumbai. And her sort of work spans issues in development alternatives, employment and labor market structures, poverty, human development, gender and development. In particular, I must insist that, and of course, a very path-breaking work on time use studies. She has written several books, articles, and she's the one we have always consulted her, not just we as scholars, but I think there are several in India and outside the country. People actually look forward to consulting her, listening to her, and with due respect, Professor Indira Hevia, please, the session is yours.
Yes. Thank you so much for your description of mine. Anyway, let me go ahead. Thank you for inviting me to this place. And I'm really happy to see the presentations. Most of the presentations I have seen, but not all. But I have seen that overall, what we have discussed is that we have discussed the overall general concerns of non-farm sector and its dynamics and vulnerabilities of the workers. We have also discussed labor force participation rate of male and particularly female in these areas and of marginalized people, etc. So now what we have to do is to discuss the development of NFS at the sectoral level and application. So we are going to discuss this with a kind of important case studies, like, what are the sectors, how are they organized, and how can one plan better so that the diversification and sustainable employment takes place in these areas. So let me start. I have a few comments, but I won't say anything right now. I'll say at the end. So let me start with the papers. Now we have 5 papers, and all the 5 papers are in different sectors and very different interesting areas. So the first is forest-based livelihood by Devi Jayanti Raut. I may be pronouncing wrongly. Then we have Tara Nayar's paper on case study of Gulf of Kutch Coast. There's quality analysis. The other one is for Manipur. And the third one, diversification, is viability and challenges in the context of Punjab. So these are very interesting, diverse, but very interesting papers in the sense that they are all discussing how NFS, non-farm sector, can develop into sectoral level. So we start with the first speaker, and I request him to speak about forest-based livelihood and economic development.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening.
Sorry, 15 minutes. Yeah, only 15 minutes. So
okay.
by Jayanti, it's going to be only 15 minutes, okay?
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes.
Actually, ma'am, there is a problem with my laptop, so I'm not able to connect with internet. So can I present like manually, because I have a PPT, but the problem with my laptop. So I'm connecting with my phone. So shall I proceed?
If there is no alternative, you have to. There is no choice, isn't it?
So can I do one thing? I will on my video to my laptop, so you can see if possible. Shall I do that?
Yeah, please. If you can see it, that's fine.
Is it visible, ma'am?
Yeah.
So shall I proceed?
Yeah, please proceed.
So good afternoon, ma'am. And my topic is forest-based livelihood and economic vulnerability, a case study in Gandhamadhan Hill in Odisha. So, these are my outline of my presentation, the context, literature review, objective of this study, methodology, data analysis, policy perspectives, and concluding remarks. Aj estimated most of the people from rural India, you can say rural area of Odisha, they have been depending more on forest resources for their livelihood, employment, and income. According to the environment report, there are 1.21 billion total rural population living in India, and out of them, 0.7 billion rural people depending on agriculture, fishery, forestry produce as other natural resources for their subsistence. And these are my literature review. I have been reviewed some pieces of literatures to know the Indian scenario of forest-based livelihood and economic condition of rural population nearby the forest. And broadly, there are two objectives of my study. First, to find out the forest-based livelihood strategies or choices, and to know the economic condition of the rural area nearby the forest. And with the methodology, I have my study, my paper is based on both primary and secondary data. And secondary data contains several works, literature, and reports to strengthen my theoretical argument. And primary data includes a direct interview by field survey in the study area, Gandhamadhan Hill area. And I have been collected data from 604 households nearby the residing villages of Gandhamadhan Hill area, and the statistical tools like statistics I've been used for my paper to strengthen the quantitative analysis, as I have been used in our test to strengthen the study. And these are the livelihood patterns of the local tribals of Gandhamadhan area. There are 66.5% of local rural population nearby the area depending on agriculture. And you can see like there are two types, like I have divided the two types of occupational pattern: primary occupation and secondary occupation. So in primary occupation, they are basically depending on agriculture. For the people depending on agriculture. And in secondary occupation, you can see most of the people are of course in agriculture and forest, although the forest area is very near to their area, so they are depending more on the agriculture and forest. Agriculture, actually they haven't used the agriculture after 2000. They have been more depending on agriculture than forest. Because of that, the forest products, like the value of the forest products have been deteriorating day by day. So that's why they are depending more on agriculture than forest products. So these are like the economic condition of the local tribals nearby the area. So there are most of the people, they are below their annual income below 2 lakh to 3 lakh. And there are very few people, like the very few share, they have the annual income is 3 lakh, above 3 lakh. And the dependency on the forest for livelihood, there are directly 73.2% people, they have been relying on forest produce, and 26.8% indirectly dependent on the forest. But most of the people, they have claimed like they are depending on the forest, and indirectly they have they are depending on the forest road, because they are staying away to the forest. Because of that, they are purchasing forest products from nearby people. So these are the income from different sources, and the average income from like forestry is more than other source of livelihoods, followed by agriculture and other incomes. So this is the ANOVA. I have been used ANOVA test for continuous variables, and there is a significant relationship between the different kind of livelihood sources with different socioeconomic condition. There are some you can see the education and the different kind of livelihood sources are significantly related to each other, and agriculture land acre, how much land holding they have for agriculture, and another agriculture income and different kind of income, annual income also associated positively with the different kind of income sources. So okay, and finally I got some interesting points for the forest based livelihood. They are depending more on forest, and nowadays it is deteriorating day by day because of the low value addition to their income from forest resources. And basically they are relying on forest resources as natural resources, the water resources from the forest only, from the hill only. The streams are there, and their agricultural land being irrigated by that stream water and other dams also. And the policy, in if we talk about the policy perspectives, like I would like to give some policies for these local people. Although they are depending on the forest resources, but they are not getting more earning for their livelihood and for their family. So if government should at least intervene for the available natural resources, that would strengthen their economic condition in the local area. And first and foremost thing is to strengthen the infrastructural facilities. So government should focus on infrastructural development, and also for the non-farm based livelihoods other than the farming. And next, educational facilities. Also the literacy level is very low in that area, so government should focus on the educational facilities, or to aware people for the education. And of course, if the area is full plenty of there are plenty of natural resources, availability of forest resources, so government should focus on food processing unit to add the value, they should get the more value for their forest products. And of course, last and final is the awareness campaign should be initiated for many programs. Like there are some programs which have been already implemented for the initiated for the local forest based people's tribals, but they don't know the about all the programs. So government should at least campaign some kind of awareness programs and all to aware the local people for their rights. And these are my concluding remarks, like conclusion of my paper. And thank you, ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. Actually, you could have spent some time on conclusion. You have time.
Okay.
Would you like to do that conclusion part?
Yes, ma'am. So actually, the forest-based livelihood is more prevalent in Gandhardhan area because of course, if they are nearing to the forest and they have the forest resources, because of that, they're relying more on forest-based livelihoods, like collection of forest products and sold out, selling in the market and all the things. And also a large part of the local tribals based on the farming livelihood. Like other than non-farming, they're depending more on farming because of the favorable condition of the natural resources, water resources for the agriculture purpose. And Also, agriculture plays a vital role in the local livelihood of the Gandhamadhan Hill area. And of course, most of the people are choosing the livelihood sources, like choice of their livelihood based on the natural resource availability and the socio-economic condition. Also, there is a significant relationship between choice of occupation and different socio-economic factors in the area. And education, farm size, and income from different sources also affected the choice of primary livelihood. Because of that, they have the very low literacy level. Due that also a like basic reason for to dependent more on farming and agriculture based livelihood other than non-farming or service sector. And finally, the policies should be government should more focus on the infrastructural development and education to strengthen their economic condition and to involve more and more people for non-farming sector other than farming sector. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we go to the second presenters.
Is there any question, ma'am?
Sorry?
Is there any question?
Questions will be at the end.
Okay, ma'am.
Or do you want them to be now?
No, it's okay, ma'am. It's okay. It depends. No issue at all. Fine, ma'am.
Professor Das, do you want me to ask now or at the end?
No, maybe at the end will be better, I think.
Yeah, because then we get enough time.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we have the second presenters, and that is Justice Tara Nair.
Good afternoon. Just a second, I'll just share the thing. Yeah. Good afternoon, Professor Herve and others. This is I'm Tara Nair. I work with Gujarat Institute of Development Research. The presentation that I'm going to make is part of a larger study that is underway along the coast of India, the major maritime states, looking at the social economy of dried fish processing and its correlation with poverty alleviation, nutritional security, livelihood security, and things like that. So within Gujarat, we are concentrating on several kind of harbors, several coastal areas. But this particular paper is about the coast of the Gulf of Kutch, where a traditional fisher community called the Wagar Muslim community are involved in artisanal fisheries. We can characterize their the fishing practices as artisanal, looking at their technology and other characteristics of their fishing operations, and the functioning of the market and some social economy interventions happened in the coast. It's a description of that through that case study. What the paper is trying to put forth is the dilemma of traditional livelihoods and the onslaught of an expansionist capitalist development model that the state has very aggressively been following at least since the kind of mid-1990s. Kutch is the largest coastal district of India. It has a coastal kind of length approximately 400 kilometers. Gujarat has about 1600 kilometers coastal area. Gulf of Kutch, it's in the northeastern arm of the Arabian Sea. It is located between Rann of Kutch and the Saurashtra Peninsula. It's a very and ecologically and in terms of coastal, coastal ecosystem. Gulf of Kutch is a very interesting and quite a complex sort of an area. It has a large network of islands and, inlets, because some of the rivers drain into various parts of the Kutch, and there are creeks and coral reefs and mud flats and estuaries and, some sort of islands. And it's a very interesting network of ecological formations in the coast. And it has diverse marine habitats, and those habitats harbor significant amount of marine biota, marine wealth, different types of algae, molluscs, and very commercially very valuable species of fishes, especially finfishes and shellfishes you find in this coast. And the livelihoods as a result are based on fishing, farming, and salt making. That is what the resources available in that area. This is the Gulf of Kutch. We are actually going to concentrate the Mundra coast. That's where we have kind of done our little study. The Mundra coast is very sort of quite a controversial coast in very many ways. It has been in the eye of a very kind of turbulent sort of a storm, where you can see two kinds of development imagination clashing with each other. One that aggressively promotes, a blue growth strategy, a port-led industrialization and coastal development, and the other that advocates a people-centric, ecologically sustainable development that can protect the traditional livelihoods and marine biodiversity in the region. And at the very center of that controversy, you can find fishers and fish processing by the small artisanal community that we had, studied. And as I told you, Kutch is a very distinct kind of a fishing ground. It has creeks and estuaries and mud flats and things like that. So it also has a very distinct kind of a habitation pattern, dwelling pattern that the fisher folk, follow. They come from inside villages, 70, 80 kilometers away from the coast, and they set up their temporary sort of, what are called as bandars, the fisher settlements on these mud flats, just outside the mud flats. And they stay there for about 8 months doing fishing. And sometimes they even, you may know that there is a fishing holiday, June, July, August. And sometimes they continue to be there and do a kind of a, which is called pagadia. They use their foot, it's called foot fishing. They walk into the shallow waters and, use very, very traditional sort of gear to capture very high value, used to be very high value fish. And, the fishing operation, the area has all the characteristics of very small scale fishing, as we understand in India. They don't use any trawlers or kind of bottom trawlers or those kinds of nets. They're using small bag nets and gill nets. So it's in that way we can say that, like all small scale fishing activities, it's a very sustainable way of fishing. And another important characteristic of this region is that fishing is entirely done by the Muslim Wagir community. The history of Muslim Wagir community itself is very interesting. There is nothing much really known about this community, but for a reference that I came across in the Bombay Presidency, Gazetteer of the Bombay Presidency, which says that fishing along the Gulf of Kutch was chiefly in the hands of Wagirs, even in in the 1880s. But we understand that there were both Hindus and Muslims among the Wagir community. They practiced both faiths, and we also understand that in the medieval history of Kutch, such fluid religious affiliation was very common. Maybe because there was a lot of movement, to the Kutch region from Sindh, and there was a kind of a ceaseless migration and exposure to diverse religious sects. And of course, this was an area of a lot of mercantile activity. So there was also a desire for political and economic power, which also led to this kind of a fluidity in religious belief. So Vaghers, really represent that kind of a religious fluidity that the Kutch history it talks about. Currently, this community is located at the lowest rung in the local caste hierarchy. They are, according to our government classification, they are an OBC community, and their low social status is supposed to be the result of their more or less indigenous origins as Muslims. Whereas the immigrants from Sindh and Gujarat, who are more or less foreign descent, generally have a better social status in the state. We focused on fishing and fish processing practices of Wagir fishers. We had done some surveys, and we had a large number of FGVs and trader interviews done separately and in groups. And I'll just very quickly I talk about the major features of the Wagir fishing system right now. One thing which must be taken note of is the fact that every fish processor in that community is tied to a trader through a loan contract, in the sense that every fish processor has to necessarily mobilize resources, capital from a trader, and to whom he is bound to sell his catch. So that is that's an arrangement which has been going on for forever, and the fish sales happen every 15 days, and at predetermined prices. So this trader collusion, the collusion among traders of this this particular activity is not generally heard of in the fishing sector at all, because it's a very highly perishable commodity with prices varying very significantly. But when you talk about a processed food, a processed item like drying, they can actually control the variations in prices by colluding, and that the traders fix the price and they announce the price beforehand. Every year in the month of September, the price is announced to the fishers, and they are supposed to sell it at that price. And the other interesting aspect about this arrangement is that at the time of sales, 25% of the principal, 25% of the advance they have drawn from the fisher must be given back to the trader. And the trader also takes a 10% commission on each of the species that they sell to him. So it is known as a commission on an advance, which actually it works like a kind of a interest on a loan. So they're on a perpetual sort of a bondage of dearth and debt, in the sense that without that advance, the typical Wagir fisher family will not be able to survive, because the returns from this kind of small fishing is very low. And, because they are forced to sell their product at a predetermined price, they also have no control over the prices that they can fetch, in the market at that point in time, as the market is. So in 2013, a producer company was formed, and the producer company also came as a result of a long political struggle which was going on in that area in terms of mobilizing Wagirs, conscientizing them as to their rights and things like that. So as an economic extension of that kind of a mobilization process, a farmer producer company was established in 2013 with about 300 members. Now they have about 500 odd members. And interestingly, the farmer producer company right now is the largest trader in the market. It takes the lead in also pricing, price fixing and things like that. So it looks as if it's a very empowering sort of an intervention, which has helped the traditional fisher folk get out of the clutches of this situation of debt and poverty significantly. But what is happening is very interesting. Over the years, the coast has stopped producing the kind of fish it has been producing earlier, like the high value kind of fish varieties are no longer available. Partly because of, as we all know, there are a large number of industrial complexes that came on the Mudra coast. Some of them are very well known, and they have been sort of tampering with the ecology of the area very significantly. And because there is a huge port there as part of the SEZ, and Amita has done a very interesting study on special economic zone in that area. She has also mentioned about some of these issues. So this, with the coming in of this big, large port, one thing is that the mangroves have been very mercilessly, kind of destroyed, which very significantly impacted the variety and the species available around the Gulf of Kutch. And the other thing is that now, as this big kind of ships come to sort of anchor at this port, the poor fishermen have to very often lose their nets. The nets get sort of torn in mid-sea. Loss of a net is a very expensive affair for a traditional fisherman. So their ability to even get into the sea itself is becoming very limited. And of course, there are huge dredge lines through which have really kind of got into the fishing ecosystem and things like that. So ultimately, what is happening with all this empowering intervention that happened on behalf of WAG is, the fishermen, the fishers are not able to kind of get any significant returns from the fishing activity, and there is no local market in Mundra region. It has to go. All the fish has to go out. One variety, a small variety, which is very nutritionally very rich, called golden anchovies. That goes to Andhra Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Punjab, and Haryana, largely as poultry feed. It actually feeds the poultry feed factories in some of these places. And anchovies are supposed to be very good in terms of nutrition. So it has actually been taken out of the food chain, and it has actually got into the fish meal sort of a chain. Other fish varieties goes to Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, and and some of them are circulated within Gujarat. The essence is that this small sort of fishermen are linked to a very complicated web of transactions through the value chain till it reaches some of these places. It's a very very complex sort of relationship, starting from the wage fish to maybe a hatchery in Punjab, produces poultry feed. But the benefit of that, that long chain is definitely not, reaped by the small fishers in the Mundra region. That's a short story of this complicated picture. Women's role is extremely important because they are very critical in processing. Not only here, any dry fish processing, if you see, women play a very significant role in terms of sorting the fish, drying the fish, etc., etc. And here they also act as vendors, especially the Pagadiya system. But their labor remains completely unpaid, and they're seriously overworked in these activities. And quality of fish is extremely bad because the wagers, if you go to the bandars, you will understand the fishing settlements. They dry this fish in the open yards, which are essentially mud and sandy beaches. And this cannot fetch a good price. This has to finally get into some sort of a inferior product category. So they are now specializing in trash production. A very rich area, biologically rich area. A kind of rich in biodiversity, but are forced to specialize in production of waste fish or trash fish, which is very seriously undervalued in the whole kind of product range that we know of fishing. So that is, and I just given the time constraint, I have I just summarize my story as that a small set of producers forcing to yeah. So this is the last slide. What we are trying to establish through this presentation is that despite the efforts at collectivizing some of these small farmers, which we in the morning session we discussed about the social economy initiatives and the role of cooperatives and collectives and all that, despite such efforts, even if such collective marketing or collective production facilities are put in place, still there are a large number of constraints that the producers will not be able to easily overcome. Impact of climate variations, which impacts catch size and composition, predominance of low-value trash fish, and the coastal industrialization, which is the topic of discussion per se. because as we know, we follow what is known as a blue growth strategy, where the global capital has now found that the open seas are their great ground to kind of an exploit and create, surplus. So they want to sort of, get into the open seas, and that's what the blue growth strategy finally allows. Invisibilization of small fishing sector in policies and local development strategies. And of course, in the case of this particular group, the lack of tenurial rights to use the land, to own the land they use, and absolute control by traders over the market. And the traders are interested in short-term profits, so they encourage trash fish production. And if you really look at all these factors, then sustainability of fishing as a livelihood opportunity in the coast of Kutch is a very big sort of a question. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dara. Now we go for the third presentation, and that is occupational diversification in rural non-farm sector, a post-COVID analysis, and that Tiasa Mishra.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sharing my screen.
Yeah, please do that.
So is it visible?
Yeah.
So good afternoon to one and all present here. So I am going to present on the topic occupational diversification in the rural non-farm sector, a post-COVID analysis. So this paper has been prepared by myself, Tiasa Mishra, first year PhD research scholar, and my supervisor, Professor Bhagirath Behra, and we are from the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences, IIT Kharagpur.
Okay.
Firstly, I'm focusing on the importance of promoting the rural non-farm employment, RNFE. So it helps to remove poverty and income inequality, and also it prevents the outward migration and helps to bridge the rural-urban divide. So it facilitates the labor-intensive manufacturing activities and tries to eliminate the disguised unemployment of the rural workforce, and also it utilizes the local human and natural resources in a better as well as efficient manner. It helps to produce the low-cost goods and services. It encourages occupational diversification and helps in improving the overall living standards and welfare of the rural population. So this paper basically focuses on the four things. One is extremely difficult conditions of the migrant workers during the COVID times, problem of job insecurity and or lower income, and excess pressure on the local resources and disguised unemployment in the rural sector, and the need for occupational diversification in the rural non-farm sector in the post-COVID period to promote the inclusive and sustainable development. We have done some literature review, like Langio in 1999, he explored the policy options for promoting RNFE. Then Ranjan in 2006, he examined the role of RNFE in the occupational diversification. In the very next year, Bhaumik examined the gradual development of RNFE between the 20th century, 21st century, specifically focusing on the period of economic reforms. Rahut et al. In 2015, they carried out the decomposition analysis to analyze the non-farm activities which can reduce the income inequality with very less amount of investment, with unskilled or very less skilled labor, specifically in the developing countries. Shah and Patnaik in 2021, they focused on the patterns of the rural non-farm sector in Gujarat. In the very same year, two other papers also came up with the like Dral and Mandal. They came up with the theoretical and empirical analysis of the barriers such as a lack of proper education, credit, and access to social capital for the RNFE in India. Kumar and Pandey in 2021, they found out some inverse relationship between the employment opportunities and the rural-urban migration. And then in this year, Saroj et al., they examined the role of RNFE for employment recovery in the post-COVID period. So the emerging issues are like, how can poor households with very limited assets can contribute to the growth process? How are these poor households benefited from the rural non-farm sector? And do the existing policy measures necessarily cater to the local employment needs? So the existing studies are not into these matters. So our paper focuses on the following objectives, like to examine the trends and patterns in the rural non-farm employment across different states of India and sectors, to understand the diversification of the employment opportunities in the rural non-farm sector of different Indian states, to examine if such occupational diversification is going to help in arresting the migration of the local workforce and bringing in the economic and livelihood stability in the rural areas or not. So we have formed a conceptual framework. So two parts are there. One is the context and the issues, and the second is the possible interventions. So we can see that in the very left side, COVID pandemic, it can have it results in two things. One is the limited non-farm livelihood opportunities, and the second is the reverse migration of the workforce. So due to both these, it creates some increasing pressure on the farm sector, and due to these there will be depletion in the stock of the natural resources and higher risks but lower returns, which means that there will be disguised unemployment in the farm sector with very low returns. So both of these will lead to the threat in the livelihoods of the people, and so growth of non-farm sector and occupational diversification is required to promote the inclusive and sustainable development. And to ensure the growth of the non-farm sector, two things are required. One is the policy and institutional supports, and second is the development of the social, human, as well as the physical capitals. So coming to the structure of the paper, so in our paper, section 2 relates to the literature review and the identification of the critical issues. Third section focuses on the source of data and the methodological approach. Fourth section reports and discusses the findings comparing the literature, and fifth and the last section that focuses on the concluding remarks with the policy implications. So data sources here are the Handbook of Statistics on Indian Economy from the RBI, Center for Monitoring Indian Economy, and the Periodic Labor Force Survey, Government of India. So there are three important terms used in the paper. So first is the labor participation rate, which focuses on the percentage of the working age population who are either working or who are seeking for work. Unemployment rate focuses on the percentage of the unemployed workforce who are willing to work and are actively looking for the job. Greater unemployment rate is that percentage of unemployed people who are willing to work irrespective of whether they are actively looking for job or not. Now, there are 4 tables in the paper, but due to lack of space, the other 3 tables are very big. So I have included here only one table, that is employment in different sectors in the rural India. So we have taken some sectors like agriculture, mining and quarrying, manufacturing, electricity, water, etc., construction, trade, hotel and restaurant, transport, storage and communications, and other services. And we have taken the PLFS data of 2019-20 and 2020-21 across the gender, that is male and female. So there is not much significant difference in the data in the 2 years, but one thing which I would like to focus upon is that in the other services, you can see that female in 2019-20 it was 7.3 and it has increased to 7.5 in the 2020-21. So this may be that women who have who have faced that reverse migration process. Maybe they are either in their homes looking after the children, or they are employed in work like pottery, handicrafts, etc. So moving on to the major findings. So basically, we have done the interstate differences in unemployment situation in rural India in the pre as well as the post-COVID situations. So what we have observed is that there is very high unemployment rate during the lockdown period, that is May to August of 2020, with an average rate of 12.2, which is very quite obvious. And then improvement in the employment situation during January to April 2021, with an average rate of 7.3. However, there is the employment scenario in Goa and Rajasthan that has worsened in January to April 2021, because Goa has faced like an 18.3 unemployment rate as compared to 16.3, which was earlier, and Rajasthan has faced a 20.9 as compared to 13.3, because mostly these two states, they rely on the tourism and hospitality sector, and there have been dwindling jobs in these two sectors. So comparatively better employment scenario has been observed in the rural areas of some of the states and union territories in the post-pandemic era in India. So increase in unemployment rate, that is of 1.1 in the post-COVID era as compared to the pre-COVID period. So better performance has been observed in Assam, Delhi, Gujarat, Himachal, Odisha, Sikkim, Tripura, and Uttar Pradesh during the post-pandemic era. Like the state of Assam, it has focused on the occupational diversification in the rural areas, as suggested by Swargeri and Mahanta in 2020. There has been decrease in the labor participation rate in most of the states, primarily due to the pandemic, average of 43.1 as compared to 45.8, which was earlier. Increase in average share of the farm sector employment as compared to the non-farm sector in the post-COVID situation, with an average of 19.1. So a very high coefficient of variation of share of the mining and quarrying sector has been observed as compared to the farm sector and the manufacturing sector. No such significant change has been observed in cases of Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Delhi, Odisha, Tamil Nadu, and West Bengal. Central and state governments have taken many initiatives, and these are showing recovery in the new normal situation as suggested by Kumar in 2021. Reverse migration of the rural workers has occurred due to the COVID pandemic, leading to the engagement in the rural non-farm sector, irrespective of the age and gender, specifically in the states of Odisha, Himachal Pradesh, and Delhi. And probably a rural non-farm sector can emerge as an alternative employment source in regions with high altitudes and improper farming facilities like the state of Himachal Pradesh, as suggested by Aslani and Brinkat in 2021. So concluding remarks may be that there is very limited scope to diversify the occupational structure in the rural non-farm sector, mainly because there is lack of basic education, skills, financial sources, and poor access to social capital. So enhancing the educational level in the rural areas can help and can lead to the greater non-farm employment opportunities, as suggested by Rahul. Community-driven development approach to generate greater employment opportunities and learning at local level, according to Singh in 2014, and this has been practiced in Himachal Pradesh again. A need for development of the necessary skills and awareness to cope up with the working conditions of the non-farm sector, and need for the causal analysis through some econometric model is required, so that proper strategies can be taken. So these are the list of the references which I've used in the presentation. So thank you. Hello.
उनको इंदिरा बहन को अनम्यूट कर दीजिए. Indiraben, you have to, we have to unmute actually.
Hello.
In,
That is all about my presentation.
yeah, just a moment, please. I think Indira Madam, we have to unmute. इंदिरा बहन, आई थिंक आप प्लीज अनम्यूट कर दीजिए. इंदिरा मैडम, आपका म्यूट में है, अनम्यूट कर दीजिए. नहीं, इंदिरा बहन, आपको उसका वो अनम्यूट करना होगा आपको. हाँ, बस.
तो अभी we have Durdarshini Devi.
Am I audible, ma'am?
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yeah, so yes, Durdarshini Devi, please go ahead.
Ma'am, I would like to know if my screen is visible to everyone here.
It's visible. Please go ahead.
Okay. So, wonderful early evening to the chair, my fellow participants and the audience. This is Durdarshini, a research scholar in CSPGNU. Today, I have been allowed to present a paper on the theme of revving up the rural non-farm economy, potentials and strategy. Thank you, GIDR, for this opportunity, and I'm presenting a paper titled Occupational Diversification of Rural Household in the Manipur, a field-based study. I'm going to proceed with my presentation under the following headings. First is a brief introduction to rural Manipur. The next section is a review of literature on rural non-farm employment. Then is the section on objectives, the motivation behind the paper, data sources, and methodology. The second last section reflects the findings from the survey villages. It discusses the share of households and access index overlain by class of households in its survey villages. Herfindahl index is employed to capture the diversification of occupation by households. Last but not the least is the concluding remarks of the paper. Moving on. Rural Manipur faces severe constraints as settled agriculture is practiced only in the valley region, which comprise 10% of the total geographical area of the state. Agriculture is primarily monsoon-based and most lands are left fallow during the lean seasons. A transformation in the rural labor market arises when there is limited opportunity of employment in agriculture. The state of agriculture is characterized by small land holdings, deployment of family or exchange of labor by small farming households. The opportunity of waste employment in agriculture is quite limited. However, most of the working population is confined to agriculture due to the lack of employment in other industrial sectors. The dependence on low remunerative non-farm activities by the landed household shows the inability to sustain themselves in agriculture, which led them to distress-driven occupational diversification. People in Manipur are endowed with rich forest resources. In my study villages, I found that from the month of January to around May, the male workers from the village migrate to hill districts of Senapati, Chandel, Tamenglong, Churchandpur, where they were largely employed in wood cutting and some few construction sites. And some few of the workers migrate to the urban sectors and work in the construction sector. Coming to the literature of review of the paper, rural households in less developed countries have high dependence on agriculture. However, there is considerable evidence of increasing importance of the non-farm sector in the less developed countries. Diverse village studies shows the role of non-farm sector in the elevation of poverty. Existing literature on income diversification emphasizes the distinction between distress push and demand pull diversification into non-farm sector. Some studies highlighted the distress-driven diversification into non-farm in the rural areas. They also figure out the entry barriers based on education, age, and gender. Other studies focus on the mechanization of agriculture, in which the replacement of labor-intensive agricultural operations by machines ultimately puts out the workers from agriculture, and these workers made an entry to the construction sector. SAMI in 2012 reported a favorable growth rate of real wages between 2007 and 2011-12 for main agricultural operations like sowing, transplanting, harvesting, plowing. Except for plowing mills, he found out a favorable growth rate of real wages in the state of Manipur. Some studies also suggested the variation in the co-production and low levels of income among rural households led to diversification into the non-farm sector. The importance of livestock in rural areas are also acknowledged in many of the studies. Coming to the next slide, Jimol Uni in 1991 presents a brief review of literature to explain the diversification of employment into the non-farm sector from the existing literature of that time. She found three main factors. One, interlinkages between agricultural prosperity and non-agricultural employment. Second, backward and forward linkages. And third is the non-agricultural activity as a residual sector. Many economists suggest that the development of physical and social infrastructure, promotion of tiny enterprises through microfinances, public expenditure, and localization of non-farm activities in rural areas to ease out urban congestion, as well as to strengthen the growth of non-farm activities in rural areas. In rural Manipur, there has been a gradual decline in the proportion of self-employment in agriculture for both male and female workers, as we go by the usual status of National Sample Survey estimates. And there is against the evidence of increase in the share of workers in non-agri sector in Manipur. The figure in this slide shows the growing incidence of dependence on non-farm employment by rural workers. The numbers is quite stark for the rural female workers here. There is no uniform set of factors or determinants for the growth of non-farm employment. There is regional variation in the pattern of employment in the labor market. It is evident from the previous studies that there were different prerequisites, constraints, motivations, and outcomes of households engaged in non-farm activities. Asset endowments, human capital attributes, caste, religion, gender, access to social capital, government policies, risk, seasonality were the impetus of diversification in the literature. The main motivation behind this paper, based on socioeconomic survey data of 3 villages in rural Manipur, is to make an attempt to understand the pattern of rural employment in the state. The main aim is to explore diverse activities taken up by the workforce in both agriculture and non-agriculture activities. In particular, the paper attempts to analyze the diversification of occupation by different socioeconomic class of households. Of all the districts outside Imphal, Arswal Thawal district, actually there was a district bifurcation in 2016 in which the Thawal district was divided into Kakching and Thawal. So the Arswal Thawal district had the highest number of non-agricultural establishments, and 3 villages were identified for the socioeconomic survey. A village, Thongjao, this is also known as the land of pottery in the state, a village Urengban predominantly inhabited by manual labor households, and a village in which a village Tenta in which households were primarily engaged in cultivation and pisciculture were identified for the survey. A socioeconomic survey of 306 households was conducted in these villages. The survey in Thongjao, which covered 210 out of 435 households, was conducted in the year 2016. I just wanted to give a clarity here. And Thongjao is relatively small in size as compared to the other 2 villages. A random sampling of 50 households from Tenta and 46 from Irengban was conducted in 2019. In this slide, it shows the levels of employment in the villages. The worker population ratio indicates people who were engaged in one or another economic activity during the year preceded the year of the survey. In the survey villages, the gender gap for worker population ratio was in the range of 16 to 20%, which is much lower than the estimates from the secondary data analysis. In Tongzhou, 80% of the male working population found employment and 64% of the female counterpart were engaged in economic activities as shown in the upper table in the slide. The next table shows the occupational distribution of workforce in the survey villages. Irenban had 27% of women in working age population from 15 to 59 years engaged in cultivation as their primary activities. And for their male counterparts, only 18% had taken up cultivation as their primary occupation. For Irenban male workers, manual wage work was the primary occupation with maximum share of the workforce, with a proportionate share of 46% of the workers. The waste employment in agriculture for Irenban was minuscule. Small land holdings, deployment of family labor, and exchange of labor power in agricultural operations explain the limited wage employment in the farm sector. Women workers in Irenban were primarily own-account workers. Handloom weave was the primary occupation of many workers in Irenban. 14% of the men workers in Irenban had gained some employment in construction as their primary activity. On the other hand, interestingly, in Tenta, regular salaried employees had the highest share among working men, accounting for 31% of total men workers. A small proportion of 14% of men workers was engaged in cultivation as their primary activity. 17 of the male workers were primarily engaged in fishery. It is noteworthy to mention here that the presence of Ecop Lake close to Tenta. 19% of the men have taken up manual waste work as their primary activity. Among the working men, the majority were on-account workers, more than half in the female working population age group, who had primarily engaged in activities such as handloom weave and retail trade. In case of Tongzhou, 33% of the total workforce in Tongzhou was total male workforce in Tongzhou was into cultivation, and the corresponding figure for their female counterparts stood at 13% in 2015-16. Tongzhou women workers were predominantly artisans who were art and pot makers. In this slide, the share of households, their excess index on land per capita income in different socioeconomic classes are presented. The excess index of ownership over land shows the ratio of share in land by share in total number of households by each class of household. For example, for the rich peasants households in Tongzhou here, their share in ownership of land is 14 times higher than their share in the total number of households. The peasantry's annual per capita income was below rupees 15,000 in all three service villages, which was way below the per capita official estimates of the state in the corresponding years. Household with income from traditional based handloom in Irenban and handicraft had an average income above rupees 2 lakh and had an annual per capita income of about rupees 40,000. The share of agricultural income in all three villages were low. In Tongzhou, it was just 11.5%, and in Irenban it was barely 5%, and in Tenta it was 17%. Then here it's I saw the index score of different socioeconomic class of households of the concentration of their sources of income. Herfindahl index is the sum of squares of proportionate shares of each source of income to the total household income. This index is directly proportional to the concentration of sources of income. A value closer to 1 would indicate the household's single income source and negate income diversification. While most of the more affluent households in the village did not diversify due to lack of avenues in most cases. A rich peasant household in Tongzhou continued to widen his sources of income by acquiring new means of production like machines, investing in pisciculture to retain his economic power. The rich peasant household maintained to achieve a higher income than the government salaried household class on average. However, the nature of diversification by poor peasantry, manual wage workers, and artisans reflects a distress-driven diversification given their low level of annual average income. Moving on to the conclusion. Income from the fundamental reason for diversification into non-agricultural occupation was the limited opportunities of employment in the farm sector. Income from agriculture is not substantial due to inefficient land use patterns and the small size of the land holding. Agriculture provided very few opportunities for wage employment due to the dominance of family and exchange labor. Land preparation in almost all the villages was highly mechanized. Manual labor and animal power are almost entirely replaced by machines. The majority of women workers were absorbed in on-account occupation in the villages. Male workers had limited participation in non-agricultural occupation within the survey villages. Household classification based on socioeconomic position provided a framework to study the embodied relations among the different class of households in the survey villages. The tenant in all three villages shows a high degree of diversification and of income. As mentioned, because of the small operational land holding and low income, these households had to supplement their income through participation in manual wage labor in non-agricultural occupations. Given the relatively high income and more extensive land holding in one rich peasant household of Tongzhou village, the nature of diversification is clearly investment oriented. However, the share of such demandful diversification was rare to find in all three villages. The most affluent section of the household in survey villages were households that were primarily dependent on government salaried jobs. However, due to lack of avenues, this class of households did not diversify into income-enhancing non-farm activities. So to summarize, the study of three villages displayed a picture of acute poverty and distress in rural Manipur. While agriculture was inseparable from rural households, a considerable part of the income of households came from poorly paid manual wage labor in non-farm occupation as well as traditional based occupation. That's all. Thank you.
Indiraben, I think you have to unmute Indiraben. Indiraben, आपको unmute करना पड़ेगा.
Okay.
Okay.
So we have now the last paper, and that's occupation diversification in Punjab. So I invite the last speaker to speak and present his this thing in 15 minutes, sharp 15 minutes. Okay? So, is it here, Manjit Sharma? Manjit Sharma, Jatinder Singh.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, please.
Yes, am I audible, ma'am?
Yeah, you are audible.
Yes, ma'am. This is Dr. Jatinder Singh. I am presenting the paper. So, thank you, Chair and Professor Kesdas for organizing the seminar. And the topic of our presentation is rural non-farm enterprises in Punjab: status, viability, and challenges. These enterprises, this study is largely based on the primary survey, wherein we have surveyed 430 rural enterprises from 11 districts of Punjab. And therein we asked about the potential and challenges faced by these enterprises and their journey towards entering this business. And rural non-farm enterprises are very vibrant and dynamic. They are contributing in terms of income and also helping in rural structural transformation. Around 2/3 of rural income is contributed by these enterprises, and also adding around 40% of manufacturing output, value addition. As per this NSSO 2015-60 round, the number of micro, small, and medium enterprises is around 63 million, and 50% of them are based in rural, and they are catering the local requirement. Further, around 80% are family owned, and the more than 70% they are working in the informal sector. Contribution of factor contributing to the growth of these sectors are highly debated. On the one set of studies have argued that the growth of this sector, rural non-farm sector, is distress driven because the ongoing agrarian crisis have reduced employment elasticity of the rural sector, and due to that there are large amount of surplus labor which are not able to find employment in other sectors. So due to that they entered in this business. And on the other hand, it is argued that the increase in education level, rural infrastructure awareness, and are the factors behind the expansion of this sector, because it is considered that rural enterprises are more remunerative as compared to the agriculture sector. And with regard to the rural non-farm sector in Punjab, since this is a study to Punjab state only, and if you see the expansion of rural non-farm enterprises in Punjab is from 4.5 lakh in 2005 to above 14 lakh in 2015-16. And the growth of these enterprises can be divided in two phases. The first phase start with the implementation of green revolution technology, which was initiated in the mid-60s. And since agriculture and non-farm sector are organically linked, the expansion of agriculture sector encouraged the entry of these enterprises, because the services required to the growth or the agriculture sectors are provided by these enterprises, because the implementation and repair services are largely extended by the rural non-farm enterprises. And this sector continued to grow till the late 80s. The growth of this sector remained above 12% in Punjab. But as agriculture sector started saturating in mid 80s and early 90s, the growth of this sector was also adversely affected. And it was the time when India implemented new economic reforms. And with the since Punjab is a landlocked state and a border is sharing international border, our industrial sector was also affected at that time. According to different studies, the large number of registered industrial units were also closed after the implementation of economic reform and a slowdown. So on the one hand, the agriculture sector was not able to absorb large due to the mechanization and slowdown in the agriculture sector. And at the same time, the industrial sector was also witnessing slowdown. The shrinking employment avenue and deceleration in the agriculture industrial sector caused huge unemployment. And due to that, this was the phase when allied sector started expanding, and on the other hand the rural youth, they also started migrating to other places for better employment avenue. In this context, we try to understand the status of these enterprises, their viability, and challenges they are facing. And if you see this figure, and this figure, it is clear that working hours per hectare manual working hour have sharply declined. In 1985-86, the number of working hours was 1089 per hectare, which reduced to 1/4, mean from 1089 to 268 in 2019-20. And the sharp decline was reported in case of wheat crop, and the lowest decline was reported in case of cotton crop. So the decline in the employment opportunities pushed large number of workforce out from the agriculture sector. So in this context, we try to understand whether this sector is distress driven, or if not, then what is the future potential of this sector. And this table shows the activity-wise distribution of workforce. Then if you see first two columns, first two rows, then it is clear that employment avenues in during 2000, 2001 to 18-19 has declined sharply in case of allied and main agriculture sector. The construction remained the only sector which has witnessed double-digit expansion in employment activity. Other sectors have also witnessed, but growth remained sluggish, not to the extent as it declined from the agriculture and allied sector. Then, to understand the status, we have used three indicators. One is the size of scale of operation, then the contribution to the rural household income, and how many enterprises are working with hired labor. And this, yes, before that, I just want to tell about the distribution of the surveyed enterprises, activities in which they are involved. If you see this table, majority are involved in the retail activities. This the percentage is around 27, and then it is followed by the food and beverage industry, which accounted for around 11%, and then personal services like saloon and other personal services. In case of allied sector, only 6.3% of total surveyed enterprises are involved. And in case of other like mobile repair and other services, they are also extending. So now we are trying to analyze the scale of these enterprises. If you see this table, then here in this table, we divided the scale or the size operation based on the investment. You see, it is clear that the investment size, initial investment, this is initial investment when they started. And this initial investment is varying below 10,000 to above 5 lakh. And if we combined first two groups, first two rows, up to 10,000 or up to 50,000, then the share of total surveyed enterprises increases to 65%. And only 2% of the surveyed enterprises reported that their investment was above 5 lakh. It shows that a scale of operation of the rural enterprises is very small. They are working with minimal capital. Then next we asked about the involvement of hired labor. Only 16% of the total enterprises have reported that they are hiring labor other than the family member. 84% of the surveyed enterprises are working with the family labor. Again, this is showing this is telling about the operation size and operation of the rural enterprises. And this table presents about the annual income of the rural enterprises. And it is again varying from 50,000 to above 5 lakh. Then if you see, there are around 43% of the surveyed enterprises have reported that their annual earning is is up to 1 lakh. And there are around 14% who have reported that their annual earning from these enterprises are above more than, they are earning more than 2 lakh from these enterprises annually. And again, this is varying across caste, social class. And this table, and again we calculated the contribution of enterprises to the total households income of the, and herein we divided in different ranges, and 41% of the respondent enterprises have reported that they are completely depending on the incomes they are getting from these enterprises, and 9% have reported that the contribution of earning from these enterprises to the total household income is less than 25%. And again, there are 10% are earning between 75 to 100% of the total household income. Then these three tables shows that the scale of the scale of operation of these enterprises is very small in nature, and with a few exceptions like 1 or 2% who are operating at a large scale and with sizable amount of investment. Next, we also try to understand the characteristics, their level of education, their skill level, and training which they have received before starting this business. And this table presents about the education level of the selected enterprises. And if you see the first row, there are around 9% of the surveyed enterprises reported that they are completely illiterate. They don't have any degree, or even they did not go formal school. Then if we combined if we see the second last row, there is only 13% of the total respondents who have reported that their education level is either graduation or above. Other than that, other than these 13%, the remaining 87% are either have education below secondary or up to secondary. So again, it shows that they are not well educated. If you are not well educated, then your understanding, your awareness, and all these things are limited to certain extent. And then the sources of training. Then this table in here, we also ask them if have they received any formal training before starting this business, and if yes, from where they have received, and if no, have they received any training from informal sources like traditional method from senior to skills are transferring from senior to juniors. The practical training, yes, there are only 6.7% of the total respondents, owner of the total respondents, who reported that they have received training before entering into this business, and 51% of respondents have reported that yes, they were informally trained from senior trainers, and the remaining 41% entered in this business without any prior experience or even formal training. Because when we asked why they have not received any training, then they are saying that we don't have any option because we earlier we were working somewhere else, and now we have to earn for taking care of the family. So we entered into this business. Yes, we are learning practically, but we don't have much information about this business. So it again shows that the potential or expansion of these enterprises. Then some disturbance is going. Yes.
Is it?
You have 2 minutes. Please wind up.
Okay. I will complete in 2 to 3 minutes. Yes. Then we asked about will their next generation entered into this business. Then in 90%, 89.5% have reported a no. They won't enter because this is not by choice, but we entered in this business by compulsion. Only 10%, 10.5% have reported yes, their next generation will continue in this business. Then next, we asked where would you like to settle their next generation. Then 65% have reported that they want to send their children abroad. Then about the challenges. This table shows that the sources of investment. Only 8% of the total respondents have reported that they received financial assistance or they received a loan from the formal banking or formal financial institute. And the remaining 92% have reported that they have arranged money either from their own saving or borrowed from informal sources or from friends and family members. And since we need a huge capital for starting any business, if you are not able to get financial assistance, then the growth of the enterprise is again limited. And this shows that there are a very small proportion of the total rural enterprises who are able to get financial support from the formal sources. And then we asked the size of their market, which
Please wind up now. Huh?
Where they are selling their products. Then 83% have reported they are covering only their own village. And then about the government scheme, only 1.4% have reported that they have received the benefit from the ongoing government schemes. And then last, about the finding. Yes, employment from the discussion and the analysis, it is clear that employment avenues in the agriculture and allied sector have reduced significantly in the last couple of decades. Highest proportion of surveyed enterprises are involved in retail activities, and it is followed by the food and beverage industry. Scale of operation of these enterprises is very small. Around 60% of the respondents have reported their initial investment up to 1 lakh, and 80% are not working with hired labor. And again,
I think you wind up now. Let people read it. Let people read it.
And then you can see what I have already discussed, though I am finding. The issue is that based on this discussion, it is clear that majority are not entered in this business willfully. And if we want to strengthen this sector, then we have to extend we have to equip them professionally, provide professional skills and financial sources, and also to connect with the main industrial sector. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think we have very interesting presentations, diverse presentations, which raised very important concerns and issues about this sector. I think 2-3 things are coming up very clearly. One is that non-farm sector is there in most of the villages or most of the areas. Can you hear me? Yeah. Hello?
Can Dr. Singh stop sharing the PPT?
Hello? Can I go ahead?
Yes, please. Yeah, please.
So what I wanted to tell you, what I thought from this session is something very important, that the non-farm sector is there in each and every area in some or other way, either forestry or rural artisan or whatever it is. But sustainable, viable sector which can generate employment in the mainstream, sustainable employment in the mainstream, is something which is not happening. And that way, they are not productive enough, they are low profile, not developed enough. But if you see on the other hand, that the areas like Punjab, where agriculture is dynamic, education has grown, training also is there, infrastructure developed, and proximity to urban areas is also there sometimes. And these are the conditions under which non-farm sector develops. So at the macro level, you have to think of this, that unless you have this modernized agriculture, dynamic agriculture and other things, non-farm sector may not develop. But at the same time, if you want to develop non-farm sector in other areas, where there are possibilities, but where the sustainability is not happening, there I think one has to think in terms of developing a new strategy which really works very well with them. You know, for example, Rural Entrepreneurship Development Program is there. I don't know whether it's there anymore because it stopped after some time. But that program developed group entrepreneurship and developed groups of entrepreneurs in some areas which helped them to survive. And at that time, it was our opportunity was there to study this program, 30 such programs in India, and we found that these poor areas or low productivity areas where sustainable non-farm sector doesn't appear to be feasible, it can be made feasible if we involve large number of producers, small producers even, together, organize them and make the size of production large. In the sense that even if you are producing eggs, for example, it doesn't help unless you have a number of producers together and then you can sell together. You can have brand name, you can have advertisement possible, you can have professional management, professional listing. And there are many, many models in the country that show this. Like, for example, Amul, traditional production and processed in a very high-tech manner. So that is one way. Or you can have high-tech right from the beginning, and you can do that. Or you can have forest management, in NTFT, for example, it is possible where you organize the collectors, let them have better yields from the collection. At the same time, process NTFT, non-trade timber forest products, and develop some kind of an activity out of which income. You have to have a size which is not too small, otherwise you can't survive. You have to have professional management, otherwise you cannot survive in this thing. And you have to have technological upgradation, jump in technology to improve your production. If you satisfy these conditions, then even in backward areas, non-farm sector can develop as a healthy productive unit. This has happened in the case of Lijjat Papad, it happened in the case of Pune, for example, I've seen Pune, they have this small factories, large number of factories like Telco and Nelco and Kirloskars and all that. Now they need small parts, so they organize a small training program in a village and develop young educated persons, not fully educated, maybe 10th pass or something, train them into manufacturing these small little items, and they created jobs. And ultimately, it progressed and went up to a very high level of technology. So there are ways and ways of doing this, and fortunately, in India, several such models have developed. But to include the poor people, include the below poverty line, less educated people into this non-farm sector and even sustainable jobs, you have to plan in a manner that you do this. Now, I think I have taken too much time, but we have some 10 minutes to ask questions or comments or what you do this. Any question, any comment?
I just have one or two small points, and one for Vaijayanti. That's actually, I was a little, I was not very clear whether the study actually led to the conclusions or the suggestions, particularly the large number of policy suggestions that the state should develop infrastructure, and state should go in for awareness campaign of the various policies and also promote education in the place. So I thought, I mean, those in themselves are good suggestions. I'm not countering that. I'm only wondering whether the survey that has been done, whether that led to this, whether the people, local people are really looking forward to that, or they would be better off, let's say, by migrating elsewhere. I mean, that is what, meaning my point is whether it came from the study or it is the scholars' own perception about what could be done. So that was something I wanted to know. And from the Punjab study, I was just wondering how these enterprises, MSMEs were selected, like on what basis, the size or whatever, I mean, which definition they followed or how it was selected. So these are the two questions. Thank you.
So, shall I answer the question? Baijanji? I'm Baijanji. Hello.
हाँ बोलिए.
Actually, I haven't surveyed, like there are many villages nearby the forest area, and I haven't asked the question for like what they need for their future and whatever, and the suggestion for the infrastructure, because I have gone through all the areas and I have seen the like grassroots scenario in that area. So because of that, I have given the infrastructural development suggestion from myself. Like I have also asked many people. I have observed from their villages and their household level area. So that is from my side. And another thing, I have given a food processing unit for the forest resources or natural resources. So that was for like from my study only. I have asked people, local people, what they need, like if they need some kind of like industrial development, sustainable development or whatever, and they answered the thing like yeah, we need, but we don't need like polluted kind of thing, we need sustainable development. And if the development will take away like our economic condition of uplift our economic condition, then that's okay. But yeah, if it will be based on forest products and other natural resources, that will be okay. So I have given for that only. I have asked it, and based on that, I have given the suggestion.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, to answer your question, I think it's very important. I mean,
hello.
All very good infrastructure, etc., immediately. But those areas where they are relatively poor areas, where such sustainable non-farm sector is not surviving, over there, if you want to survive them, if you want economies to be survived, then you have to create some kind of development which creates jobs in the non-farm sector, which diversifies the economy and produces backward and forward linkages in the region so that it survives. You know, there are many models. There is a product line. For example, you can start with an collection of leaves, etc. And then you can think of BD production. And then you can do, not BD, but something else also maybe. And then you can sell it in a very organized group, organized way. And maybe later on you can put a brand there and you can sell in a better way. So a whole product line can be generated in those areas, because isolated non-farm sector unit in a village cannot survive unless it's a government service or some service, etc. But otherwise, isolated non-farm sector, like, you know, fisheries is a very traditional job, and it help you help them by giving them new nets and modernized things, etc. It helps, but it doesn't help for long because they cannot survive in the market and they are big fishers in the field. You know, I give you an example of Vikas. They started with Kharagoda, I mean those salt people. You know, salt production in Gujarat is done by very poor salt producers. Now they started organizing them. They gave them better technology by using solar pumps to take out saline water from the soil in a very fast manner and quick manner, and that it improved their productivity of produce very good salt. But they could not sell it. They branded it as Sabras and all that, but they could not make because they did not have any large federation which covered large number of producers in the net, which could fight the, the others in the established market. So that's why no unit can survive alone, even if it's a very good unit, and even if it does the best. But you have to have a size, you have to have a brand name, you have to have a professional improvement, you have to have a technological upgradation. And unless you have all these things, you cannot set up a unit for the poor which is sustainable and which gives them good employment. I always thought so. Maybe you have different views. I'll be happy to know their views about it.
Can I answer? Actually, Professor
Yeah,
Das
please,
asked.
please.
Yes. Actually, with regard to the selection, we have, the sampling has done on at two stages. In first, we have selected districts wherein we have developed index based on number of the workers employed in non-agriculture sector, then education level and workforce. And then same index we calculated for the blocks also. And then after, after selecting the blocks, then we had a meet, since we don't have a list or information about the enterprises of rural enterprises, we had discussion with the block level officials, and also after selecting block, after meeting block level official, we opposed the village level official. Based on that, we had a listing of these enterprises, and then after preparing a list, of the rural non-farm enterprises, we randomly selected based on that list.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I got it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyway, anybody else?
I'm not sure if anyone else.
No, I think the only thing which comes to my mind as far as Punjab is concerned, well, since I come from that area and I understand it a bit better than other places, this is in that way counterintuitive result. In fact, what Jatinder is getting it in 11 districts, whatever enterprises they've surveyed through what and the methodology that they followed, it's all right, understandable in the given the state of database on that, and that's how they went about. The results are very disturbing. In fact, in many ways, any terms, outcomes, as far as if you look at, it's quite disturbing, and people are basically wanting to migrate, and that's a trend within Punjab, and we know that. So, Jatinder, do you have anything to say with regard to how do you read this situation? Are you disturbed? You come from Punjab.
Yes, sir. Actually, the situation is quite disturbing. Recently, we had completed one study on drug addiction and abuse, and that was largely focused in Punjab. And at the same time, we have also surveyed 4 surrounding states: Punjab, Haryana, Jammu, and Kashmir, Rajasthan. Well, this results are very disturbing when we go in detail and ask why. Then we can understand why people are migrating, because that study again, this study we have completed recently, and before that we had done on drug addiction. So then the situation is even quite disturbing in some areas. This is the overall picture what we are presenting. But if we go in some border districts, I think Dinesh knows better about Amritsar district since he comes from that area. And because in that area, especially in a border district, around 20,000 units are closed in the last 10 years. This is based on RTI information. We don't have any information, but we got through RTI. So as per department, around 20,000 units are closed. In the and out of 20,000, 43% are only from Amritsar district. And this I am talking about the registered industrial union.
No, I know it. My family comes from Amritsar, and I know they were into power loom sector and handloom sector, and they really suffered heavy losses. There's no doubt about it. Yeah.
So just situation is like that. Still, we are in the process to finalize, but these are the some preliminary evidence which we are presented today.
So I think Indiraben, I'm not very sure if there are any other questions.
We close the session.
Yeah. So we thank Professor Indira Hirve to have sort of conducted this session very patiently and very nicely sort of organized the sequence. And we are also thankful to all the paper presenters, Bajanti, Tara, Tiasa, Bhagirat, Tokcham, Manjit, Jatinder, and Ravinder. So all many thanks. And sort of we got a kind of, it was though there are only few papers, but I thought it was very interesting because they represented different states from Manipur to Punjab to Odisha, Gujarat. So I thought that has given us some sense of the diverse nature of problems of non-farm sector and possibilities of livelihood, employment, and enterprises. So with that, probably we end this session. Indiraben, आप कुछ कहना चाहते हैं?
Yeah, I think it was a very interesting session, as you say. We are out of time also now, because you have one more session still. So I would not go into anything else except for I thank you very much. Thank you and JLR for this thing. And I really enjoyed the conference because it came out with diverse views and diverse pictures of different situations. Thank you very much.
Okay. So with this, the first day sort of comes to a close. And please do join tomorrow at 10 o'clock. So we'll have 2 more technical sessions, and there'll be very interesting valedictory session, which will be addressed by Professor Dinesh Abrol. So please do join and maybe share with more people the links and all that. Thank you so very much, and have a good day ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think we can close.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, sir.
Recording stopping.